What's up, everyone? I'm Jared Harris, and you're listening to episode 37 of Beats by Jer. While many artists have held a firm grasp on the mainstream consciousness this year, from the unstoppable wave that was Taylor Swift's Eras Tour to Sabrina Carpenter's pop dominance, along with massive releases from the likes of Billie Eilish or The News and release of new music and reformation of Linkin Park, none have been quite as exciting, culturally relevant, and creatively ambitious as Kendrick Lamar. This in itself is an impressive feat for anyone. To display such a level of control on your audience that leaves the popular culture as a whole waiting, reacting, and reflecting on your every move is an incredibly powerful thing. However, this is even more impressive when you recognize the role hip-hop has in the mainstream. Pop music has always reigned supreme. However, since the 1960s, rock has always served as an equally popular and mainstream alternative to pop. That is until the mid to late 2000s, when rock was officially surpassed by hip-hop in every metric. Since then, rap has dominated the same sphere as pop. However, it stands on the outskirts of pop culture, massively consumed by fans of the genre, with the power to exceed its own boundaries, but not tipping the scales in terms of being on the minds of the mainstream consciousness, unless you are, of course, the biggest star in the genre. This is the same for any harder genre, any genre with a greater edge that exceeds what popular music allows for at the time, or any sort of music that is based around virtuosity instead of catchiness, right? We could think about jazz. The household names are the biggest titans of jazz: Miles Davis, John Coltrane, maybe Herbie Hancock. But the others, the Wayne Shorters, the Kamasi Washingtons, the amount of jazz artists from any era who do not break through that sphere is huge, right? Outside of Metallica, there is really no metal band that is a household name, even stars that can perform in stadiums and do arena tours. And while Nirvana would change the world with Smells Like Teen Spirit and Nevermind, anyone that is not familiar with grunge would be hard-pressed to likely be aware of the Soundgardens or the Alice in Chains that were equally as important to that wave of music. If we look at punk music even further on the fringes, you probably only have the Sex Pistols, and that's likely only because they caused a massive stir with their image, not with their music. Most people that know the Sex Pistols name are probably reflecting on the image itself and could not name a single song. Often, for these non-pop popular genres, because the distinction here is that, as we've discussed in previous episodes, pop music is popular music, but other genres exist within the popular music realm that are not pop, right? Anything that is commercially viable, that is going to be heard on the radio, that has the potential for mainstream appeal, is considered popular music. Often, for these non-pop popular genres, it really is the biggest of the bigs that become household names, icons that truly break into the realm of pop music. If we look at rap, Eminem is a obvious contender, as he remains the greatest selling rapper ever, but we also can't discount the privilege and popularity that comes along with his complexion. Snoop is another candidate, of course, but this is also likely more due to his association with Martha Stewart and his endless side-questing lifestyle that has made him a brand ambassador for countless companies, as well as a consistent voice in the media, and very recently an Olympic torchbearer. Dr. Dre is another one that comes to mind, but again, this may be his music revitalized through his Super Bowl performance or the Straight Outta Compton movie, but also likely his association with Beats by Dre and Apple. Truly the only modern rap artist, and I put that in air quotes, rap artist, to become equal to that of the biggest pop stars is Drake. And that's certainly because he is more pop star than rapper. In this case, Kendrick Lamar's 2024 is an absolute masterclass in domination of the popular sphere without sacrificing your musical and personal integrity, ultimately demonstrating a significant cultural shift for the genre as a whole. Between features for Future, Metro Boomin, and SZA, in addition to an incredibly viral record-breaking feud with Drake, and a string of further releases and events culminating with the release of his newest album, GNX, Kendrick marked yet another peak in his career with his 2024, making him the most engaging and relevant artist of the year. While numerous artists in the last decade have put out impressive runs of albums, done big tours, have commanded the attention of the media, the mainstream consciousness, I would argue that in the last decade, possibly probably longer, we have yet to see an artist dominate an entire year, largely even without an album, without the benefit of having an album cycle to promote and a tour. We have not seen an artist command this much of the attention of their audience, but also beyond that, the attention of the media, the mainstream media, and the general pop culture consciousness in quite some time. This is truly an impressive feat, and it's something that we don't tend to see anymore. We don't tend to see artists control the popular sphere like this without an album, without a tour, but we'll discuss that as we continue. Now, of course, the beef between Drake and Kendrick is what instigated this year, is what set Kendrick up for a huge year itself, but also allowed for him to lay the foundation for something that went beyond the beef. If we look at Kendrick's 2024 in a greater scheme, underneath all of it, we could see a call to arms among the culture to depart from a problematic and toxic industry, an industry that is an extension of colonialism, an industry that is manipulative and allows for predatory behavior, a profit-first industry that does not, in fact, seek to elevate the culture or vulnerable at-risk communities. We can see this through the beef. We can see this post-beef with the pop-out concert, with the Not Like Us music video. We can see this throughout the fall. And of course, this is a huge idea central to GNX. Kendrick had bigger plans. It wasn't just about taking on Drake for showmanship. It wasn't just about taking on Drake for the views. There was a lot more to it. So let's begin. We're going to actually start with post-beef, a quote from a book written by Questlove, which obviously was written long before its publication. However, Questlove released his latest book, Hip Hop is History, on June 11th of 2024. And when discussing the era of Kendrick Lamar and Drake in the last decade, Questlove wrote, Drake ascended the commercial throne and almost single-handedly established Toronto's contemporary hip-hop bona fides by projecting a nice guy persona that concealed some of the same kinds of sexism that had bedeviled hip-hop for years. And Kendrick Lamar rose into view as a kind of anti-Drake, a brainy, introspective lyricist who felt compelled to chronicle the world around him. There was beef between them, though it seemed to be more about showmanship than anything. Kendrick dissed Drake as the kid with the motor mouth, but later denied that there was any real rift. Still, those figures marked out the two directions of hip-hop, versions of the have and have-not divide that played out at the Source Awards back in 1995. Was hip-hop a tool for analyzing and ultimately uplifting culture, or was it a way of wallowing in easy pleasures and worrying about what that wallowing would do to your character? Like I said, this was written long before the actual Kendrick and Drake beef, and Questlove came out following the release of Not Like Us, condemning the beef itself and the levels that it reached. But here, Questlove outlines a clash of values as best represented between these two. And this is important to know because this is kind of the foundation and makes the beef feel a little more contextualized in a long-standing cultural issue. It wasn't just about throwing words at each other. To Kendrick Lamar, this was far greater than that. And we could see that these roots go back throughout the last decade. And we could see that this is something that Kendrick has been working on moving forward throughout this year. On one hand, you have Drake, a representation of culture commodified, and on the other hand, you have Kendrick. This would be the root of the beef, something Questlove expertly called long before it occurred. You could say that Drake unintentionally started the beef last year when he grouped Kendrick, Cole, and himself together as the big three on first-person shooter, and the fact that Kendrick took that as an offense demonstrated an unwillingness to be connected to either. What started as a feud with Drake at the beginning of the year has since become a war for the culture, as seen not only through the stance Kendrick took on songs like Not Like Us, but his releases and events that he has held since then, including the new surprise album, GNX. If we're looking at the idea of the war for the culture, we must first understand what the culture is. The culture is shorthand for the lifestyle that goes with hip-hop. It is the art that has emerged from the struggles for the quest for equal citizenship, dignity, and survival of African Americans amid social injustice, inequity, and institutional oppression. The culture is a subsection of American culture, one directly linked to the African American narrative, one that is embodied by the spirit of hip-hop. If this feels ambiguous, it's because it is. To define what the culture is to put it in a box. It is to confine it to what it was, something which no one, let alone myself, has the right to do. Culture is ever-moving and present. It flows and develops with every passing thing that we do as we collectively chip away as well as add to it simultaneously. The same can be said for the culture. What is for certain is that the culture is rich, the culture is beautiful, the culture is soulful. The culture is the voice of Black Americans. For my Toronto listeners, the AGO just opened a temporary exhibit, The Culture, Hip-Hop and Contemporary Art in the 21st Century. It's a brief but thoroughly enjoyable and an incredible display of African American art and visual interpretations of hip-hop. I would definitely recommend checking it out. Now we can see that the culture remains an important narrative within Kendrick Lamar's music, even before 2024. On The Heart Part 5, released in May 2022, the music video opens with a quote, "I am all of us." Lyrically, the song discusses the culture alongside with a video that sees Kendrick assume the faces of different people, from Kanye to OJ and Will Smith to Kobe. Through his words and his use of imagery, he looks at the culture through good, the bad, and the challenges, while exploring how vast the culture actually is. In the end, the culture is the soul of Black America. Kendrick is the culture, but so is every Black man, woman, and child. Kendrick was claiming this back then, just a week before he would release an album all about the idea of self-improvement, which, given the pairing of these two songs, this song, The Heart Part 5 and Mr. Morale, perhaps the idea of self-improvement is so that we can benefit our immediate community, whether that be our families, the spaces in which we occupy, the culture in one way or another. Now, on GNX, however, we see him vie for the culture in fears of where it may be drifting towards due to the influence of other leading forces. After taking on Drake, GNX sees Kendrick deliver a stunning record that can vibe with classic and modern hip-hop. Beneath the sleek West Coast production, however, he explores themes of unity, side by side with defiance. He calls for the culture to come together whilst they burn down the weeds of a toxic and criminal industry that exists to choke the life out of future growth, while making the claim that reincarnation is needed in order to save the culture. The concept of reincarnation is central as Kendrick examines ideas of lineage, cultural heritage, and the future. First, through his own self-reincarnation, equipping him for what he needs to be done for the task at hand. And of course, in traditional Kendrick fashion, his own need for reincarnation is in fact a metaphor for the death of a current cultural cycle to allow for the rebirth of a new creative cycle that seeks to elevate the culture rather than for allow it to wallow in increasingly challenging times. If the rap feud saw Kendrick take the rap throne, then GNX sees him embark on a far greater, far more ambitious, and far more challenging endeavor as he goes to war for the culture. Let us begin by looking at the road to GNX that paved the way for Kendrick Lamar's intentions, along with what is a massive, long-standing, and surprise album rollout. By this point, we're all familiar with the rap feud between Kendrick and Drake from earlier this year. For episode 24, I went deep into it, giving a track-by-track analysis, sometimes even line for line, while looking at the history of hip-hop feuds, the role they play in the genre, and how this one redefined the shape, speed, and intensity future beefs will occur in our digital and streaming age. If you haven't listened to it, then spoiler alert, like most, if not all fans of true hip-hop, I dubbed Kendrick the winner in a competition that wasn't even close. This episode is dedicated largely to GNX and the lead-up to that, post-beef. However, I will provide a very brief, perhaps too brief, overview of the feud for the purpose of context, If you're unfamiliar with what's going on, if you're surprised that Drake is threatening legal action, or you just aren't sure as to what all the buzz is about surrounding GNX, check out episode 24. What started with what could have been a throwaway verse featured on Future and Metro Booming's Like That quickly escalated into a feud with Drake that saw the two artists go song for song in the most thrilling and immediate rap beef in the history of the genre. Something that, if you were fully engrossed in, felt like a war for the culture itself. Since then, however, to capitalize on the year, Lamar has released GNX, his latest album making a victorious year for himself and hip-hop as a whole. Earlier this year, within a period of less than a month, however, the two artists sparred in what initially captured a competitive spirit. Drake picked up from where Kendrick left off on Like That with push-ups and tailor-made freestyle. Kendrick countered with Euphoria and 616 in LA, a pair of poetic and expertly crafted warning shots. Blood was drawn, and the sparring match quickly escalated into a critical point of no return, a brutal duel that challenged the listeners to determine what they valued in hip-hop. Streams and numbers versus artistic statements, posturing versus integrity, celebrity status versus artistry and intention. The sparring match had escalated to a point of no return, with Drake releasing Family Matters, a song that brought Kendrick's family into the line of fire. Kendrick returned fire with Meet the Grams, a song that explored Drake's vices, his failings as a father, and his profiteering off of black culture. Within a day, Kendrick went in for the kill with Not Like Us, a diss track to rule them all, a song that was an absolute bop, a true contender for Song of the Summer, and since then, Song of the Year. Lyrically eviscerating, Kendrick calls Drake out as an alleged pedophile. This taking place as a key hook in the song over a catchy as hell beat provided by DJ Mustard. These are accusations and a song that will follow Drake's career for the rest of his life. The song was inescapable, and what was the center stage in the world of rap has spilled into the mainstream media. Truly, this was everywhere, and even culminated with a shooting at Drake's Toronto residence and attempted break-ins. People who'd never heard of Kendrick Lamar were suddenly very aware of what was going on. The sparring match became an incident of attempted murder. Drake got the final word in with The Heart Part 6, a weak retort that brought the most exciting musical feud of our generation to an anticlimactic whimper. Given the nature of its conclusion, we were left with a sense that nothing had actually been resolved. Complex has recently released some stats that are worth highlighting regarding this feud. After Drake released The Heart Part 6, the final song to come out from this conflict, Kendrick's discography saw a 49% increase in streams. His diss had the opposite effect. It sent people to his enemy. That's crazy. If you release a new song, your streams are supposed to jump significantly, not the inverse, not the target of these songs. Kendrick benefited the most from The Heart Part 6. Not Like Us, Kendrick's final song from the beef, right? Took only 10 days to reach 100 million streams, beating a record previously set by Drake on God's Plan, making it the fastest rap song to reach this milestone. And lastly, and what I think is most interestingly, Al Green's What a Wonderful Thing Love Is saw a massive 283% increase in streams after Kendrick had sampled it on 616 in LA. This just goes to show you between these three statistics that the rap feud was everywhere. It was not self-contained between these two artists or within the confines of the genre. It was everywhere. And like I said, it did escalate to real-world consequences, with Drake's residence being the target of attempted break-ins and a drive-by shooting. If the broad strokes of this interest you in the slightest, or if the significance of GNX and Drake's lawsuits against Lamar and Universal Music Group have you feeling out of the loop or surprised, check out episode 24, where I examine the lyrical significance and the underlying cultural aspects of each song. In many ways, this is the sequel to my original examination of the feud. And if you don't believe the scale and scope this feud has had on the control Kendrick has had on popular music this year, a quick look at the massive Wikipedia page with over 180 citations of the beef may change your mind. There are legit world events with smaller wiki pages than this rap beef. It's crazy. Since the release of Drake's The Heart Part 6, much has actually happened in the fallout of the feud, but nothing has since re-instigated it in any way. While Drake has provided a masterclass in how not to take an L, Kendrick has enjoyed a monumental victory lap, one that has captivated the mainstream for a better part of the year with numerous post-beef releases, culminating with the surprise release of his 5th studio album, GNX. While not officially over, Drake took the last shot in the feud with The Heart Part 6 on May 5th. As previously stated, the song felt like far too little, far too late, quick to capitalize on Kendrick falling for a false leak of an estranged daughter, and too slow to deny the allegations of pedophilia. Beyond that, the raps were just weak. It was unearned. It was lame. There was nothing redeemable about this track, and Drake crowns himself the winner of the feud in the song, but doesn't even sound convinced himself. If you think I'm too hard on this, take it from both Kendrick and Drizzy himself. Kendrick felt that this was not up to snuff, failing to reach the heights of Not Like Us, that he chose not to respond at all. And Drake must have agreed, as he has since removed the track from streaming services. If you're going to put out a shot like that, you need to at least stand by it. Otherwise, what ground or credibility do you have? The lack of response from Kendrick left everyone who followed with bated breath. Was there more to follow? Were the rumors and his claims of having 10 more tracks in the can legit? Would they ever drop? These are questions that I still have. Will we ever see the full extent of the body of work that Kendrick had crafted in the attempts to bury Drake alive? These questions still stand. However, on June 6, nearly a month after Drake's attempt to save face, Kendrick announced the pop-out concert on June 19th at the Los Angeles Forum. The show sold out almost immediately. This was the first post-beef statement, and while the pop-out concert has gained its own meaning, it was very much initially seen through the lens of the beef. Pulling its name from the lyric in Not Like Us, sometimes you gotta pop out and show. The fact that it was held on June 19th, Juneteenth, a day commemorating the day when 250,000 slaves in the state of Texas, the last bastion of slavery during the final days of the Civil War, were declared free by the U.S. Army in 1865, and the fact that it was hosted in Inglewood, a city in southwestern Los Angeles County predominantly made up of Black and Hispanic residents, was huge. This was a celebration of the culture, of music, of heritage. Not only was it held in one of the city's biggest stages, but it was streamed live via Amazon Music. As the world saw this as Kendrick celebrating his victory, Kendrick was actually pivoting attention to a greater goal, one which was much clearer by the end of the show and something that he has continued to push thematically since. The show featured a who's who of West Coast hip-hop, including performances from Dr. Dre, DJ Mustard, and Absol, Schoolboy Q, and J-Rock, all from Top Dog Entertainment, Kendrick's former label, and among other artists. The show itself was quite unique. Rather than have artists come on for a few songs leading up to Kendrick's set, each performer was given brief moments throughout the course of Kendrick's performance. In this sense, there was no opener. Rather, Kendrick was taking the opportunity to celebrate others, artists that he cut his teeth with on Top Dog, and artists who inspired him and continue to inspire him. Kendrick opened with Euphoria, his first song from the beef with Drake, a song seen as a scathing attack, one that has grown to be viewed as a stern and aggressive warning, forbidding and simultaneously tempting Drake to cross the line. Impressively, Kendrick was omitting numerous words from the 6.5-minute song, and in those pauses, the voices of thousands of people could be heard repeating the lines, a powerful rally cry that should leave Drake terrified at what other lyrics they may know and would certainly repeat later on in the evening. Kendrick would perform hits like DNA, All Right, King Kunta, Mad City, Humble, all along with deeper cuts with his peers like King's Dead with J-Rock. The set came to a peak with Dr. Dre emerging, a rarity in his own career as Dre hasn't toured in almost 2 decades. Performing Still, DRE, and California Love alongside Kendrick being the hype man to Dr. Dre. It was incredible. Dre stayed on stage to whisper the opening of Not Like Us. It was so sinister to hear Dre do that, "Psst, I see dead people," as he cranes his neck towards the camera. It was so menacing, but also a real passing the torch moment. Of course, Dre and Snoop and Cube have all in the past called Kendrick the torchbearer, the king of modern West Coast rap, this was just yet another reminder that Dr. Dre, right, founding member of NWA, founding pioneer of the G-Funk sound, and who has worked with the likes of Tupac and Snoop and discovered Eminem and worked with 50 Cent and all of these huge voices in hip-hop, Dr. Dre was reminding the audience who Kendrick Lamar is in relation to the legacy of West Coast rap. As expected, Kendrick himself didn't say the A minor line. Instead, the beat cut out entirely, and he paused for the audience of tens of thousands to scream it, letting those words, those allegations, hang in the air for over 40 seconds. It was a powerful moment. An iconic song in the canon of hip-hop was given an iconic concert moment, demonstrating the longevity Not Like Us will have for generations to come. Kendrick then started the song from the beginning, allowing the audience to rap the first verse in its entirety. By this point, Not Like Us was among the most streamed songs of the year. It was a hit in every sense and was a favorite in the clubs, but the pop-out concert solidified it as an anthem. Not Like Us will be performed 6 times, back to back to back to back to back, further proving this. And again, stopping at the A minor line until the third attempt, where Kendrick continued through the song. He allowed for the audience to take control of the most damaging line 3 times, starting the song over each time before actually making it through past that line. If he stopped there, the pop-out truly would have been a celebration of Kendrick's victory. However, when we factor in the context of Juneteenth and it being held in Inglewood, what comes up next makes this far more significant than a simple victory lap. Kendrick would call members of both the Crips and the Bloods to join him on subsequent performances of Not Like Us, along with the likes of Mustard, Russell Westbrook, Ab-Soul, J-Rock, Schoolboy Q, Tyler the Creator, DeMar DeRozan, Top Dog, Rick Ross, Hit Boy, Rhapsody, and so many more. This was huge. Watching the video, it looks like a true party on stage as the camera struggles to follow Kendrick through a mob of people dancing and rapping and singing along. It was crazy. With all these people on stage, people that are supposed to be rivals from different sects and factions of these gangs that have been known to carve out their territory against one another for generations. At the close, Kendrick posed for a photo, echoing the art of To Pimp a Butterfly, flanked by Crips and Bloods, along with the celebrities that hung out with him on stage. Opposing gangs flanking his sides, this was a culturally significant moment. The image has since been used for a billboard with the caption simply reading, "Us." From stage, Kendrick stated, "Let the world see this. You ain't seen this many sections together on one stage keeping peace. This is unity at its finest. Inglewood, y'all did this. LA, y'all did this. This shit makes me so proud as a motherfucker. We've lost a lot of homies to this music shit, a lot of homies to this street shit, and for all of us to be on stage together, unity from each side of motherfucking LA, Crips, Bloods, Pyrus, this shit is special." Kendrick continues, "This shit ain't got nothing to do with no motherfucking song at this point. No back and forth records. It's got everything to do with moments right here. That's what this shit was about, to bring us all together. That's what this shit's about." He then unified them in a cheer of One West. Musically, culturally, the pop-out concert was truly a special event. In addition to everything stated, it was Kendrick's only live performance this year. Some called it petty to attach Not Like Us to the meaning far greater than the content of the actual song, while others felt that this is how you turn a win into a moment of cultural significance greater than focusing on a rap beef. What was certain was the quality of the event. This was Inglewood's Woodstock. Numerous outlets titled it the most iconic concert in rap history. And the fact that it was live streamed only makes it better. Billboard called this a coronation. For those still fixated on the beef, this was Kendrick dancing on Drake's grave. For those who saw the intention, however, The pop-out served as an extension of the narratives of Black excellence and equality that Kendrick has held close to the core of his art from the very beginning. Turning a message into tangible action, he then donated $200,000 to 20 different LA-based charities, many of which support children. Another jab at Drake, certainly given the context of Not Like Us. Charities included the Boys and Girls Club, the Compton Girls Club, and the Tommy the Clown Foundation. For just a moment, let's take a step back to the release of Not Like Us. The song very quickly became the nail in the coffin for the feud. It was done. What more could be said? Since then, photos and stories had circulated about a music video being made. On the evening of July 4th, a few weeks after the pop-out concert, with no pre-promotion save a few non-descriptive stills released the day before, Kendrick dropped the music video for Not Like Us. Billboard called it the most anticipated video of the year so far. By the morning after, the video had reached over 13 million views on YouTube, and by that afternoon, the number reached over 17 million. As of now, as I record this, the video has now reached 194 million views and still stands 5 months later, over 5 months later, as number 35 trending in music videos. The video clocks in at 5 minutes and 54 seconds long, nearly 2 minutes more than the song itself. And curiously, the song opened with a 20-second snippet of music that had previously been unheard of. The snippet would be titled Broccoli by fans due to the lyric "Woke up looking for the broccoli." Now, writing this in December, we know that this was the opening verse for Squabble Up, the second song from GNX. However, at the time, this was huge. A music video, after all, is a visual component meant to pair with the song to promote the single. To my knowledge, no one else is releasing previews to, at the time, unannounced and unreleased music in a video for an already released song. This, of course, is very on brand for Kendrick, who has spent his career releasing the Heart Parts 1 to 5, a series of singles that have preceded each of his albums but have curiously never appeared on any of the actual albums themselves. Fans consider these to be something of a palate cleanser, while others believe that this series will be its own project that is slowly being revealed itself to us over time. I see it as a unique take on modern marketing, a refusal to play the typical singles game, using these tracks instead of a single for impending music, therefore forcing his audience to first hear the songs that make up each record as he intended for them to be heard on the album cycle. Whatever it may be, a 20-second hint of new music was at the top of this highly anticipated music video, and it was huge. It sparked rumors that a new album was imminent, and at the time, the Broccoli clip was so huge that the very beginning of the Not Like Us music video is in fact the most replayed section. At a glance, the video for Not Like Us follows a very traditional form of hip-hop, showcasing a great level of choreography with each verse. New set pieces and locations are introduced, and with each giving Kendrick and company a chance to introduce new visual elements. It's a great video. However, on its surface, the video seems like nothing more than a second victory lap following the conclusion of the beef. Beyond this, however, is a heavily symbolic series of visuals that bookends the beef while hinting at where Kendrick was off to next. Let's start with the most explicit symbols. The first comes in the form of a massive owl piñata, which Kendrick beats mercilessly until it bursts during the wop 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 chant in the first verse. An obvious reference to Kendrick beating Drake in the feud, with the owl, of course, being the mascot for OVO. Shortly after this, Kendrick can be seen dancing across a chalk-drawn hopscotch board, which lines up with the infamous A minor line. A quick backtrack for context: throughout the beef, Drake fans regularly accuse Kendrick fans for reaching for meanings that weren't necessarily there, and lining up the hopscotch to signify A minor and Drake's preference for underage girls was seen as a reach. I'm confident that this was incredibly intentional. If for nothing else, there is no other moment in the video where Kendrick is on tarmac, near a playground, or even in that outfit that he wore for that shot. This moment is too singular in its visual to have been coincidental. It was placed specifically to symbolize the allegations of grooming. Not nearly as symbolic, but the video features a number of cameos from various people, from the likes of Q, Soul, Rock, Mustard, YG, Thundercat, Hit Boy, DeMar DeRozan, and others. Not only does this demonstrate a level of support from different people in the industry, different people that Kendrick has worked with from the West Coast, but this also puts some of Drake's claims to rest. The first being Anthony Top Dog Tiffith, founder of Top Dog Entertainment, the label that signed Kendrick. In Push-Ups, Drake reduces Kendrick to being less of a rapper because he got a worse deal when initially signed. However, Tiffith's presence speaks to the good-natured relationship him and Kendrick continue to have, even since Kendrick has since left Top Dog to form his own label, PG Lang. Another one, Dave Free, Kendrick's longtime manager, and so much more, also makes an appearance. And this is significant, of course, because in Family Matters, Drake rapped that Free and Whitney Alford, Kendrick's fiance, had a relationship that resulted in the birth of a child, making Free the father to one or both of Kendrick's kids. Not only does Free make an appearance in the video, but he also directed the video alongside Kendrick, once again demonstrating the false claims. This happens on one more occasion. When Kendrick raps, "The family matter and the truth of the matter, it was God's plan to show y'all the liar," an excellent line all on its own as it plays off of the title of two Drake tracks, Family Matters and God's Plan. While calling out Drake's false claims against Kendrick, the camera cuts to a scene of Kendrick in a living room with Whitney and their kids as they dance and chase each other around the living room. This counters Drake's claim that Kendrick had physically assaulted Whitney in the past, and on top of it all, Whitney can be seen wearing a wife beater in the shot. The most powerful use of explicit symbolism, however, comes near the end of the video where Kendrick can be seen facing the camera, out of focus. Between us and him is a barn owl, completely in focus. The shot then flips, and we are now behind Kendrick as he walks away from the owl, only now the owl is housed within a cage. As he walks away, the owl arches back, its ruffled feathers settling only with Kendrick gone. This moment was incredibly impactful, truly among the most powerful blows delivered in the feud and visually represented through the use again of the OVO mascot. It doesn't only symbolize Kendrick's victory, it is a metaphor for the level of control that he has exercised over Drake, something that will last for the rest of his life. Drake will continue to be Drake, he will continue to achieve massive numbers. After all, he was just named Spotify's most streamed rapper for the 10th year in a row, but he will never forget how Kendrick scared and scarred him, making what was once a series of quiet whispers within the industry a part of the mainstream discourse surrounding his identity. Drake will forever be left looking over his shoulder whenever he whispers Kendrick's name. Naturally, the beef was explicitly referenced through Not Like Us, the music video, which of course makes sense. This was the song that ended the beef for time being. More importantly, and much like the Pop-Out concert, the video is a call to unity. Throughout the beef, Drake criticized Kendrick for not being gangster enough and for claiming to be for the streets but having actually left them behind entirely. Counter to this, Kendrick chose to film the video in his home city of Compton, with an open call for people to take part in the video. Over 1,000 fans were shot for the video, largely using drone and crane shots. The audio of them rapping along with key lines, you guessed it, A minor among one of them, can be heard throughout the video as well. Kendrick and Mustard also hit up Tam's Burgers, a favorite in the Compton area, which, much like New Ho King, a Toronto Chinese joint reference in Euphoria, saw a massive uptick in sales following the release. Beyond this, the video also features on multiple occasions Tommy the Clown. Tommy the Clown is known for creating the clowning style of dance in 1992, which would become crumping. He did so to revolutionize the clown industry for the hip-hop age as a thing for birthday parties and would even perform at parties for Pamela Anderson, Madonna, and Cedric the Entertainer. Tommy would gain international recognition through Dave Chappelle's documentary Rise, that is Rise with a Z, not an S, that looked at this style of dance. Through this, Tommy discussed at length that clowning and crumping was more than just for kids' entertainment, and he saw it as a way to keep kids off the streets. Dance was a way that kids of any socioeconomic background could physically and artistically engage with their friends and community rather than having idle time that could transition into drugs and gangs. Between his appearances alongside his students and the inclusion of the Compton community, the ongoing message of cultural unity is continued through the Not Like Us music video. While this was becoming clearer, it is with the release of GNX that gives us the hindsight to see that Kendrick was using the conclusion of his beef with Drake as the foundation for where he was headed next. At the time of its release, most people were left wondering if Kendrick was hoping to reinstate the feud. Rumors circulated of an album dropping in August, and when that didn't happen, the rumors kept shifting. It's not hard to imagine that an album was coming. Kendrick, after all, had a massive first half of the year. Why not strike while the iron was still hot? On September 8th, it was announced that Kendrick would be featured as the headlining artist of the 2025 Super Bowl. The announcement was made with a video where Kendrick slyly referenced the beef, stating, there's only one opportunity to win the championship, no round twos. With this line, Kendrick has moved forward, something he hinted at with the Pop Out and Not Like Us music video, but had not officially made clear. Drake can come at him all he wants, but he's already lost. This will make Kendrick the first solo rapper to headline the Super Bowl and will mark his second appearance after briefly performing alongside Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and 50 Cent in 2022. Naturally, this was huge, and I have to wonder how much of the decision from the NFL rested on the success of Not Like Us, or if he was one of the runners-up for some years and that they had been following. Despite this, the news was met with much controversy, as Super Bowl 59 will be held in New Orleans, and the biggest rapper to emerge from Orleans is Lil Wayne. While Wayne himself didn't say anything publicly, there was a split in the hip-hop community. On one hand, there was a grand level of excitement for Kendrick, the biggest rapper of our time, at an all-new height on the biggest stage, but an equal level of negativity directed towards the NFL and Jay-Z, who was largely responsible for the decision, for overlooking Wayne in what would have been a huge homecoming moment. What's most interesting about the Super Bowl is nearly all artists who've headlined this are legacy artists, musicians well over 20 years into their careers, often even more so. Kendrick marks a rare entry of someone barely 15 years deep, unless of course you count his unofficial early mixtapes made as a teenager. Still, rarely do we see someone not established in the legacy act category take this role, speaking to the cultural currency and artistic value Kendrick carries in our time. On the night of September 11th, Kendrick dropped a new song via Instagram. The untitled track has since been titled by fans as Watch the Party Die due to the reoccurring use of the line in the song. The track echoes 616 in LA in the context that it was released without warning exclusively through Instagram and uses a photo of a pair of Nike Air Force Ones from an eBay listing similar to the glove used for 616. The track also shares a similar vibe, musically, to 616 in LA, which tracks as both songs were produced by Jack Antonoff and Soundwave, leaving me to wonder if there was an entirely separate body of work completed by the trio that GNX would replace. Musically, Kendrick raps over a lo-fi and spacious beat that feels like it was pulled straight from RZA's basement. It's soft in tone, but still grimy, fuzzy, and distinctly retro. That is where the similarities end, however. Upon first listen, the song feels like Kendrick is seeking to reignite the beef, but upon further listening, there is so much more at stake. And in fact, Kendrick is not concerned with Drake in the slightest. Lyrically, Kendrick alludes to his conflict with Drake, almost sympathizing that he is only a product of a corrupt industry that has created and allowed for Drake to be what he is. The first verse opens with the following lines. I think it's time to watch the party die. The shit done got too wicked to apologize. It's different, get 'em whacked and disqualified. We even kill the killers 'cause they like taking innocent lives. Burn the whole village, we start over. It's really that time. Why reason with these if they can't see the future first? Why argue with these clowns if the circus is well at work? He continues, if you parade in gluttony without giving the truth to the youth, the graveyard is company. Just tell us what casket to choose. That last line's crazy. The graveyard is company. Just tell us what casket to choose. That line is wild. But we could see, like, there's elements of, like you could understand hearing this for the first time. You're like, yeah, this is obviously about Drake. But you listen to it, and there's a lot more going on. There is a little bit of a sense of almost rationalization in his voice, justifying his actions from earlier in the year. And he separates himself from the crowd that he's criticizing, denoting a lack of integrity or care that artists in the industry have. But again, he's not necessarily taking aim at anyone in particular. The chorus reads like a prayer for inner peace, almost like a conversation with God as Kendrick asks to be kept on his own path. That is also very similar to 616 in LA, a song that saw Kendrick almost plead with God before going to war with Drake. The second verse continues far more aggressively in the lyrics, very Old Testament in his approach as well. Kendrick raps, "Let me know when they turn up as a casualty. I want agony, assault, and battery. I see a new earth filled with beautiful people making humanity work." In the final verse, he continues down this path while also trying to reconcile his approach, opening with a comparison to revered Christian rapper Lecrae. "Sometimes I wonder what Lecrae would do, fuck these up or show him just what prayer do." A few lines later, he's about to declare what he would do, but the line cuts out, almost like Kendrick is censoring himself, likely not to catch a charge, with the line being used as evidence against him, something which happens far more and more often to rappers than you would think. If that interests you, check out the amazing documentary As We Speak, Rap Music on Trial, and catch my conversation with director J.M. Harper in episode 20. The self-censorship that we see here is super interesting. Like, what was that line supposed to be? Did it reference someone directly by name? Was it simply just a very aggressive, brutally so line that Kendrick's lawyers told him that he should cut out for the sake of avoiding such legal charges, despite the lack of action? Again, the nuances of the American justice system in relation to hip-hop lyrics is fully fleshed out in that documentary. He closes the track. Jay Estrada said, "I gotta burn it down to build it up. That confirmation real as fuck. It ain't too many real of us. Locking into what I trust, looking outside. The kids live tomorrow because today the party just died." By whole and large, Watch the Party Die is an attack on the entertainment industry, an industry that turns a blind eye to and enables the likes of the Weinsteins and the Cosbys, the Drakes and the R. Kellys. It is no coincidence, then, that this would be on Kendrick's mind, as one of the most dominating stories of the year was the revelations of Sean Combs, better known as Diddy, Puff Daddy, Puff Diddy, Puff P. So he had so many names. However, the revelations of what he was doing, his affairs, his parties, was huge this year. The Diddy case is one of the most Googled things of 2024. With this context, the use of party in the unofficial title and its heavy repetition throughout the song seems as though Kendrick is directly taking aim at Diddy. The closing line, "The kids live tomorrow," reinforces this. Again, there is this concern for future generations, the livelihood of children, the innocence of children, to protect them from the sins of the father, the past, and to reduce the impact of intergenerational trauma. This is, again, a reoccurring theme that Kendrick has used since Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and we see it come back here. Diddy, of course, was among the most pioneering hip-hop moguls with the foundation of Bad Boy Records, and has proved to have a massive impact on the course of East Coast rap from the 90s onward. He has signed, managed, produced, and mentored a massive list of influential artists, making him a prominent figure in not only the genre, but also celebrity culture. Accused of running a criminal enterprise from at least 2008 that relied on drugs and violence to force women to fulfill his sexual desires, according to prosecutors. While Diddy has pleaded not guilty, a series of civil lawsuits have followed, and stories are beginning to emerge about what goes on behind closed doors and what occurs at his infamous freak-off parties. The prosecution is representing 120 individuals claiming to have been sexually assaulted by Diddy, 60 of them male, 60 of them female, and 25 that were minors at the time of the incident, with one male claiming to be as young as 9 years old. Diddy was arrested on September 16th, 5 days after Kendrick dropped Watch the Party Die. The timing feels incredibly eerie, reinforcing the boogeyman, now you see me, now you don't type shit that Kendrick is associated with, a man that only emerges from the shadows when he has something to say. With Watch the Party Die, Kendrick introduces a bigger threat to the soul of the culture as he continues to tie together his thematic narrative that will define his 2024. On that note, I want to take a brief moment to go off a bit on the dates of these releases. Allow for me to speculate. Allow for me indulge my curiosities a bit on this one, because I recognize that already this is a reach, but an intriguing one at that. It was first brought to my attention with the Pop Out concert and the Not Like Us music video, and of course, Watch the Party Die. Respectively, these were released on June 19th, Juneteenth, July 4th, the American Independence Day, and September 11th, the day of the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers. This felt too coincidental, too intentional. All of these dates were chosen, and given the surprise drop of Not Like Us and Watch the Party Die, these could have been on literally any other day. Why July 4th? Why September 11th? Does the party have political connotations, with Kendrick explicitly looking at the entertainment industry as a microcosm for the greater social institutions that allow for the manipulation, exploitation, and oppression of vulnerable communities? I've yet to dig to the bottom of this rabbit hole. I suspect that there is more to come on this front. However, similarly, Euphoria was, and again, I recognize that this is a reach, but Euphoria was released on April 30th, the anniversary of the end of the war in Vietnam in 1975. And Not Like Us, the single, was released on May 4th, which in 1970 saw American protesters at Kent State University killed by the National Guard after protesting the same war. Could there be a greater anti-colonial message attached to these? It wouldn't be the first time that artists had taken this stance. Prince most famously wrote "slave" across his right cheek throughout 1995 in a statement about artists, including himself, not owning their master tapes, thus allowing for record labels to profit the most off of the work of artists. Through this lens, the entertainment industry could be seen as an extension of the social institutions designed to exploit the creative efforts of others, keeping artists within a laborious cycle that profits the industry and not the communities in which the art emerges from. Additionally, you can argue that a rap beef, like what occurred earlier this year, is especially profitable given the increased excitement and intensity surrounding each release that drew in huge streaming numbers, again predominantly benefiting the executives over the artists. So it's easy to see how conflicts such as this can be pushed, instigated, and encouraged by an industry hoping to boost listenership and sales at the expense of the livelihood of those involved. While only reputations were hurt this time around, these rap feuds have been known to have real-world and sometimes fatal repercussions. After all, both Pac and Biggie have sold significantly more music in death than when actually living. Regardless, I was unable to find anything of significance for November 22nd, the day GNX was released, leaving me to wonder if this is simply me reaching at coincidences. Additional coincidences in regards to these dates of note, the Not Like Us music video dropped on July 4th, the night of Michael Rubin's annual all-white 4th of July party, which Drake was in attendance. This is an A-list, highly exclusive party hosted by the billionaire and founder and CEO of Fnatic, a digital sports company. The party is considered a Kardashian-style and level event, representing a night of unbound hedonism from the upper class in both the socioeconomic and cultural currency sense, with everyone wearing all white. Sound familiar to another famous exclusive party atmosphere, maybe? There is a shot of Kendrick wearing all white in the Not Like Us music video, waving directly at the camera near the end of the video, hinting at a level of self-awareness and intent that could be also seen as Kendrick saying farewell to the beef as a whole. However, photos from Rubin's party show a very stressed out looking Drake, with people noting that he's aged since going toe-to-toe with Kendrick. Was the all-white choice in that scene from the video a creative choice, or was it like a little jab, knowing that this would be released when Drake was at a very influential, very special night? Who knows? Similarly, though, Watch the Party Die was released during the MTV Music Awards, a night of celebration for pop music from a fairly obsolete media company. This stands to support the content of the song itself, and when coupled with Not Like Us, we can see a reoccurring pattern of defiance against the entertainment industry. what it represents, and how it manifests itself, which, to come full circle in my own reaching, could then support the idea of the entertainment industry acting as a modern extension of colonialism, with companies and executives profiting, exploiting, and manipulating the creativity of other artists. Is this a reach? Possibly, probably, most likely, but it leaves me curious nonetheless. Shortly after this, in early October, Kendrick Lamar swept the BET Hip Hop Awards, winning Best Video for Not Like Us, Best Collaboration for Like That, Lyricist of the Year, Video Director of the Year alongside Dave Free, Song of the Year for Not Like Us, Best Featured Verse for Like That, Impact Track for Not Like Us, and Hip Hop Artist of the Year. Just a week later, on October 21st, he would be interviewed for Harper's Bazaar, an American monthly women's fashion magazine, and is often considered America's first fashion magazine, with original publications in 1867. Lamar marks the 5th occasion that a man has graced the cover of this esteemed outlet. This was Lamar's first, and still at time of recording, only interview this year, even post GNX, and seems like an odd choice for a male musician to go for. While photographed in numerous outfits for the article, Kendrick can also, in multiple pictures, be seen leaning against a single Buick Grand National, foreshadowing what was to come. If anything, the choice of Harper's Bazaar represents the ubiquitous of rap. We can see just how big hip-hop is as a whole, that it can reach the cover of a magazine such as this. By exceeding the boundaries of, say, Rolling Stone, Vibe, The Source, or XXL, outlets dedicated to music and hip-hop, Kendrick Lamar demonstrates the relevance of the genre alongside his own cultural currency as one of the most influential and recognizable figures in pop culture. After all, they aren't just putting any musician on the cover of Harper's Bazaar. There is also a conscious decision to elevate the genre by bringing it into a new arena, a place hip-hop has yet to go. This is only furthered when we remember a new song that was debuted at the Paris Fashion Week in 2023. The still unreleased and untitled track, similar to the Broccoli clip, has taken on mythological status, but reminds us of Kendrick's continued attempt to elevate the genre by bringing it into unconventional places. The song leaves me curious as to what 2024 could have looked like had Kendrick not been featured on Like That, given the organic, almost alternative country energy to the beat. I say country in like a classic sort of almost ragtime kind of vibe, a lot of acoustic guitars, strings, and pianos, with a driving pulse from the drums. But given that what little we've heard of this beat, perhaps there is a shelved album of material drastically different from the direction Kendrick would end up actually taking this year. The Harper's Bazaar interview was hosted none other than by SZA, a former label mate and frequent collaborator of Kendrick's. Reading it, it feels less like an interview and more of a conversation between lifelong friends who are catching up. They discuss the intersection of masculinity and race relations, along with intergenerational trauma, the creative process, and spirituality. It really is a unique conversation, one which would make for an incredible, unabridged podcast. Most notably, however, SZA asked Kendrick about what Not Like Us means to him. He responds, "Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man that I represent, this man has morals, he has values, he believes in something, he stands on something. He's not pandering. He's a man who can recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes, and can dig deep down in fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he is less of a man. If I'm thinking of Not Like Us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that." When asked about creating out of anger, Kendrick notably states, "I do believe in love and war, and I believe they both need to exist." Of course, more on this soon when we look at GNX. The final quote worth revisiting speaks to the unity and sense of community Kendrick was working on with the pop-out concert and the Not Like Us music video. "I feel my work in music is just the start. I don't think it's my end goal. I know it's not my end goal. Music is just a vessel to get me there." And finally, on November 8th, the Grammys announced their nominees for the year. Kendrick was awarded 7 nominations. Alongside Billie Eilish, Charli XCX, and Post Malone, who all received 7 nominations, the only artist to receive more this year was none other than Beyoncé. Both Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter trail with 6. Again, awards, nominations, and sales really aren't a great metric for art, but they do allow for us to better determine the relevance of an artist in the popular landscape at a particular time. Not Like Us was nominated for Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Rap Performance, Best Rap Song, and Best Music Video, with Like That nominated for Best Rap Performance and Song. Additionally, Mustard was nominated for Producer of the Year. Now, I say all these things between the Grammys, the BET Awards, the Harper's Bazaar, everything that has happened post-Beef. I look at for the sake of providing context to where Kendrick was going. He was planting the seeds of what to expect for GNX as he used this year as a reflection of his own morals and looked at what was wrong within the industry and looking for a way to create a better future for himself, for his immediate community, and for the greater community of the culture. And of course, we look at these awards not as ways of saying he's the best, look at these awards, look at these nominations, but of course for looking at like the relevance and the platform he has as an artist within pop culture. This is not some offbeat rapper who is on the fringes of the charts. This is someone who in 2024 led the conversation, led the dialogue, and in some ways created the dialogue surrounding the culture and his artwork. And to fully understand the importance, the impact, the significance of GNX, we have to look at these things contextually. At this point, without even releasing an album, Kendrick was already in line to be among or the rapper of the year and was even on the table for artist of the year. By any metric, his 2024 was huge. He was featured prominently on a key track from one of the genre's biggest albums. He released 5 songs, 2 of which unofficially on IG, and 2 of the 3 official releases would be #1 hits. One of these 2 would be among the conversation for Song of the Summer with one of the biggest music videos of the year after going toe-to-toe with one of the world's most popular artists and winning. He swept the BET Rap Awards and picked up a number of Grammy nominations and was set to headline the Super Bowl. With all the year-end recaps coming in, Not Like Us was the most streamed song on Apple Music, and Kendrick was the 5th most streamed rapper on Spotify. In every regard, this was more than enough to demonstrate the musical power and relevance of Lamar. Despite this, on November 22nd, Kendrick Lamar released his 5th studio album without any warning whatsoever. On the morning of November 22nd, a video was posted on Kendrick's YouTube channel. There was no description, no words of dates or anything. All we had was a series of visuals of Kendrick, a Buick Grand National, and an audio recording. The video was titled GNX. There is no word if this was a single, an album, or a tour announcement. 30 minutes later, the album dropped on streaming services. As the story goes, Kendrick apparently went to Interscope, the label in which his independent label, PG Lang, is distributed through, record in hand, and submitted it that day, demanding its immediate release. Given the history of Interscope being one of the few truly artist-centric labels, if that can ever truly exist in a pure form, and given that Kendrick is among the most relevant and active artists on the label, especially this year, it only makes sense that they would go along with this. As discussed in episode 32, where I looked at the cultural impact of U2's Songs of Innocence as a means of disrupting the release cycle at the onset of the streaming era, Kendrick joins the likes of U2, 9 Inch Nails, Eminem, and Beyoncé as the only artist to truly release a surprise album without any pre-promotion or hints whatsoever. While this proves to be an excellent means of capturing the world's attention immediately, no matter how big you are, the surprise release is incredibly risky, as if it fails to track on day one, you run the risk of your record disappearing rather than commanding the attention of the media for a brief and intense period. Even Taylor Swift has dodged the true surprise format, opting for a quasi-surprise drop in Folklore, an album delivered with only 24 hours notice. Something still incredibly risky and impressive nonetheless, but Taylor Swift's hesitance to truly do a surprise album demonstrates just how challenging this is. Before looking at the album itself, there is more to be said about the GNX trailer. For starters, the music used in the video is not present on GNX. This echoes the broccoli clip at the beginning of the Not Like Us music video. Seriously, who promotes an album with a piece of music that is not actually on the album? If the surprise release format is disruptive to conventional cycles, then this is taking it to the next level. The clip itself is exceptional and has left the audience hoping for a follow-up album. Now, I don't often ascribe much to these theories. It seems that with every album Kendrick drops, the rumors begin to swirl that another is coming soon. With Damn, the album released on Good Friday, and it concludes with the death of the narrator. People suspected a following album to emerge on Easter Sunday. He has risen, jokes aside, it really was a Good Friday indeed. As you guess, no album actually followed, however. Jump ahead to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and without cause, the same theories about a second album emerged. Now this time around, it seems Kendrick is playing with symbols and timing to fuel these rumors, or is in fact hinting at more to come. For starters, both 616 in LA and Watch the Party Die remain unofficially released, only to be heard on his Instagram, suggesting a wealth of work, both Soundwave and Antonov not only produced these songs, but were heavily involved in GNX. Beyond this, as mentioned, a single Buick Grand National was used during the Harper's Bazaar photo shoot. Early on, Kendrick was flexing an album was coming without telling anyone, symbolically through the visual of the GNX. Within the GNX trailer, however, a pair of Grand Nationals were prominently displayed, suggesting that the cars are physical manifests of the albums themselves. Additionally, in the Squabble Up music video, a pair of double albums are referenced: Isaac Hayes' Black Moses and Nate Dogg's G-Funk Classics Volume 1 and 2, displaying the second of the two discs in this case. Still, this is about as convincing as the damn Good Friday, Easter Sunday theory. It's deep, it's well constructed, but just a theory. What gives this more gravity is the proximity to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is among the biggest stages in the world. It makes sense to make any critical announcement, whether it be a release, a tour, anything. For best marketing, for best visibility, make these announcements immediately before or immediately after Super Bowl Sunday in order to capitalize on the spotlight. Case in point, following Usher's performance in 2024, he saw overnight a 500% increase in Spotify streams, and the tour that he had recently announced, the Past, Present, and Future Tour, doubled in size following his performance to meet demands from 24 to 58 performances. So why would Kendrick release an album now when, given how big of a year he's had, he didn't need to? The size of his 2024 pre-GNX was incredibly impressive. It was a monumental year. It was a year that people who release albums could often only aspire to achieve. So why release it now when in just a few short months he could have released it before walking on stage or immediately after walking off stage, when all eyes would truly be on him? To release GNX right before or after the Super Bowl would have made a big album significantly bigger. Why not wait the 3 months and make this the biggest album of your career? Some suggest Kendrick is using GNX in place of the Hearts Parts 1 to 5. Rather than whet our appetites with a single, he dropped an album to prepare us for yet another album. Again, it's a theory that I don't ascribe much to, but the timing of this release, the immediacy of it all, leaves me wondering if there is more in store for halftime. What leaves me curious, timing of everything aside, is a recent conversation with Dave Free, Kendrick's longtime manager, shortly after the success of Not Like Us. In a rare interview with Pin Up magazine, he stated, "We want Michael Jackson's Thriller." You know what I'm saying? We want The Matrix. We want to play on that level. These are, of course, pop cultural touchstones that everyone knows about. You don't need to hear Thriller to be aware of its effect on music, on culture, on consumerism. There's a reason, after all, over a decade after his death, and despite all the allegations and documentaries, Thriller remains untouchable. Jackson and producer Quincy Jones struck gold on that record, an album that broke all sorts of records and was listened to and revered by people of all walks of life. Boasting features from Paul McCartney and Eddie Van Halen, Thriller broke out of pop, becoming a universal artistic statement, a benchmark that remains arguably untouched in terms of artistic quality, but also cultural effect, dominance, relevance. It seems that genres are so fractured these days and so nuanced that to have an album that comes out that reaches all corners, all audiences in one way or another seems less and less possible. This, with the timing between GNX and the Super Bowl, and the distance between the Super Bowl and the mid-April kickoff of the GNX tour, leaves me wondering if more in fact is on the way. After all, it would only be strategic. Let's talk about the album itself. After all, we are over an hour into this now. GNX consists of 12 songs, predominantly produced by Lamar, Antnoff, and Soundwave, with Mustard making a pair of production credits, and curiously, Kamasi Washington on another pair, along with numerous other producers popping up here and there. The album gets its name from the Buick Grand National Experimental, a limited edition of the Grand National. Developed in 1987, only 547 of these cars were ever made. The GNX marked a collaboration between Buick and McLaren. Going 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, the GNX was not only quicker to reach 60 miles than the Ferrari F40 by 0.4 seconds, it beat the F40 by 0.3 seconds in a quarter-mile run. The only car that could actually compete with the GNX at the time was the Lamborghini Countach. Highly coveted, many people have been quick to point out that the GNX was developed in '87. The year that Kendrick was born, citing a story from an old interview where Kendrick mentioned his dad driving him home from the hospital in a Grand National. Between that and the feats the car delivered back in the day, it makes for a cool story. However, I think there's a bit more to it. Despite its rarity and its accolades, the GNX is not a household name like the Ferrari is. However, it's a coveted car among collectors and enthusiasts. I liken this to Kendrick's place in the rap and popular music sphere. By most standards, Kendrick outperforms most, if not all, of his peers, remaining an invigorating and innovative force within the genre who has changed the face of hip-hop on numerous occasions. Yet he is not necessarily a household name if you do not listen to rap or hip-hop. Drake, on the other hand, for how much people like him, is rarely, if ever, credited for revolutionizing or innovating anything. In fact, he is often criticized by rappers and rap fans alike for not really being a rapper and being more of a pop star who uses rap. Like Kendrick said in Euphoria, "I'm what the culture's feeling." Much like the GNX, there is something of a if you know, you know vibe to Kendrick. That, of course, if you listen to hip-hop, you know, but if you're outside of that sphere, if you know, you know. On frequent occasions, he has broken through to the mainstream consciousness. However, he doesn't often stay for long. Yet that does not diminish his consistency, quality, or artistry. The comparison makes sense in the idea that the GNX is more niche. For a car enthusiast, it's a no-brainer. Whereas the Ferrari, if you don't know anything about cars or hip-hop, perhaps you'd side with Drake, right? One of the most streamed artists in the world. The numbers are there to support him, and the audience is there to support him. But again, if you know, you know. Similarly, Run the Jewels predominantly displayed the GNX on the imagery surrounding 2020's RTJ4, using it as a symbol of their status as perpetual underdogs. While not globally recognized as the likes of Drake or the biggest pop stars of our time, those most in touch with the genre know that Kendrick very much embodies the spirit of hip-hop. Aside from the trailer, GNX dropped with nothing else. Without a single or a video, Kendrick was releasing music with the intent for it to be heard as intended in the format of an album. There was no single to prime expectations to give you an idea as to the vibe of the record, nothing like that. Instead, we all went into GNX cold. The album opens with whacked out murals, and the album, unless you chose to shuffle it, unfolded almost cinematically song after song, front to back, with everyone experiencing it the same way as everyone else, something that is almost unheard of nowadays. The music video for Squabble Up, the only single at the time of writing, would drop on November 25th, 3 days after the release of the album. The space between album and video supports the idea that Kendrick wanted us to hear the album as a full-length experience rather than having a preview of the album through the lens of multiple singles leading the way. As we move more and more into a single-driven industry, this is a bold move, one that could really only work for an artist of the same scale as Kendrick or above. Similar to a surprise release, it can be seen as a disruptive factor to the accepted release cycle and further challenges how we consume music. The argument can be made that our dependence on singles only further perpetuates the algorithmic system that reduces the value of music, and with albums seemingly losing their place in the rat race we call the streaming era. Kendrick is prioritizing his art by releasing it as an album first. The release of the Squabble Up music video seems more as a promotional means designed to propel the success of the album, again hinting at an album-centered industry of days long gone. Similarly, there was no word of a tour or any live commitments until the Grand National Tour was announced on December 3rd, once again allowing for GNX to exist without being lost in Kendrick's own noise. It's all too normal to pair a release with word of a tour as a means of capitalizing on the immediacy of the moment in a cyclical promotion, where the release promotes the tour and the tour promotes the release. This is standard because it works. In our digital age, it is ever more challenging to capture the attention of your audience, so to make the announcement as big as you can, to reach as many in a single moment, rather than leave them waiting for a follow-up, is key. Kendrick doesn't have to play that game, and again, this of course is the privilege of being as successful as Kendrick is. He knows his release will stand without a tour, and his tour will stand without a release. So for 10 days, GNX existed just as a record with a music video, and the audience got to enjoy an album as is without subsequent content. Between this and the surprise drop, Kendrick is demonstrating the need to disrupt the release cycle, perhaps a literal way of representing his themes of defiance towards the music industry, something we'll look at soon in much more detail. We see this through the unofficial release of 616 in LA and Watch the Party Die on Instagram, and furthermore, with a series of clips, Broccoli, Paris Fashion Week, and the GNX trailer of songs that aren't actually released and do not in fact pair with what they're promoting. Jumping ahead, way ahead of GNX, on December 18th, Kendrick actually released Money Without Me, an entirely new song previously unreleased and suspected of being recorded during the sessions for Section 80, largely due to the stylistic tone of the song and the way Kendrick is using his voice. Money Without Me was previously leaked in the last few years. What makes this interesting, however, is that the song was released only on YouTube as an unlisted video, which meant that you needed to have the link to actually access it. The track remained invisible on his channel. The link was shared around, and shortly after, UMG had pulled the video claiming copyright claims. My theory being that there was a sample that wasn't fully cleared, or that Kendrick released it without properly registering a copyright through UMG. Either way, this got me thinking about these unofficial releases. Why do them? In a time of streams and view counts, why release something designed to greatly limit its own reach? The only answer I can come up with stems from the idea of mixtape culture, a niche within different eras of hip-hop that saw artists build or nurture their fan base with unofficial mixtape releases. Often these were demos or a collection of unreleased work that didn't make the cut for previous records. They could be songs with uncleared samples designed only to be sold on a black market, or artists who would use the opportunity to develop their sound and test the waters. Often a mixtape was for unsigned artists to build an audience before approaching labels, or for established artists to quench the thirst of their fan base between albums. Either way, these were largely sold as unofficial CDs, and while some have since been released, especially with being uploaded to streaming services, there was a time when you had to go looking for a mixtape. You would hear about it from media outlets, blogs, radio stations, friends at a show. It was niche, but there was a culture to mixtapes. With streaming, this niche has more or less collapsed. Again, with the concern with views and streaming counts, why try to hide your music? Why make it hard for your audience to find your music? Wouldn't it be better to make it available for everyone? Between Money Without Me, 616 in LA, and Watch the Party Die, Kendrick is making his audience look for his music. His beef and GNX saw him take over the public sphere, but these songs required you to hear about them from someone, a friend, a blog, a podcast, and you had to search them out. Granted, it's much easier than tracking down a physical mixtape, but it's not as simple as queuing up an artist page on Spotify. These songs are almost destined to be forgotten, lost gems for you to stumble on in the future or be reminded of by a friend. This is a revival of the very niche element of the culture. At the end of the day, however, this speaks to the intention that we devote to music and art. Too often, art is synonymous with content these days, something to be consumed rather than enjoyed, relished, and obsessed upon. Between these songs and releasing GNX without any singles, videos, or warning whatsoever, Kendrick is bringing his audience back to a time where you had to listen to an album as the artist fully intended you to hear it, without being primed by anything else. These are disruptive not only to the release cycle, but also to the patterns of which we consume music, ultimately challenging listeners to go beyond the casual culture of streaming, go beyond playlisting, go beyond the algorithm, and search for the art that you wish to enjoy. GNX debuted occupying 7 spots of the Billboard Top 10, with Squabble Up reaching number 1, TV Off hitting the number 2 spot, largely due to the virality of the mustard meme, something people and corporations fully got behind. Luther hitting 3, likely due to the prominent feature of SZA, a track that has now become her most streamed collaboration. Whacked Out Murals in number 4, and Hey Now in number 5. Kendrick occupied the entire top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100, along with Reincarnated and Man at the Garden in the 8 and 9 spots, respectively. With this, Kendrick is the first hip-hop artist to debut 3 songs at number 1 in a single year, and he is one of 4 artists in history to simultaneously occupy 7 spots in the top 10 as he joins Taylor Swift, 21 Savage, and Drake. GNX outstreamed the current totals of J. Cole's Might Delete Later, released on April 5th of 2024. In a single week, Kendrick outperformed an album that had been out nearly all year. Within 11 hours of its release, GNX occupied all 10 spots of Apple Music singles charts, almost in the exact order of the album's track listing, once again supporting the idea that we are all experiencing GNX in the same way. Since the release, Kendrick, for the first time ever, has become the rapper with the most monthly listeners on Spotify, surpassing not only Drake, but Eminem as well. Within 5 days, the album reached over 300 million streams, reaching a first-week sales equivalent of 319,000 sales, making it the second biggest rap debut this year, second to Travis Scott. However, GNX has now sold the equivalent of 500,000 units, at least at the time of writing this, all without physical sales, as the vinyl pre-sale doesn't contribute due to the vinyl expected to drop in March, making GNX the fastest rap album of the year to reach gold certification. Additionally, as of mid-December, Kendrick is now the first artist ever to score 5 number 1 hits on the Billboard Hot R&B and Hip Hop charts, not the Hot 100, but the genre-specific charts. Nonetheless, he has surpassed records set by The Temptations in 1966, the Jackson 5 in 1970, Janet Jackson in 1987, Usher in 2004, and Drake in 2016, establishing Kendrick as not only one of the greatest hitmakers of the genre, but making his 2024 among the greatest runs in hip-hop and popular music history. At this point, it is worth bringing up the continued conflict with Drake. On November 25th, 3 days after GNX dropped and the same day that the Squabble Up music video was released, Drake filed a pair of legal petitions. The first takes action against both Kendrick and Universal Music, claiming that the two colluded, allowing for a bot campaign to make Not Like Us to become as big as it did. Not only was this a ridiculous claim, but sparked a wave of listeners to re-stream the track, bumping Not Like Us back into the top 20 for the first time in months. Between GNX and Not Like Us, Kendrick held 13 of the Billboard's top 20 spots simultaneously. This in itself should suggest the power of the song and refute claims of artificial streams. However, this goes further than that. Kendrick's label imprint, PG Lang, is distributed through Interscope, a label owned by Universal Music Group, UMG. Similarly, Drake's imprint, OVO, is distributed through Republic Records, another label owned by, you guessed it, UMG. As a result, a spokesperson from UMG stated, "The suggestion that UMG would do anything to undermine any of its artists is offensive and untrue. We employ the highest ethical practices in our marketing and promotional campaigns. No amount of contrived and absurd legal arguments in this pre-action submission can mask the fact that fans choose the music they want to hear." That is such a backhanded, refute of these claims. Now, payola, the act of paying radio stations in order to play songs, is illegal and has been a common record industry practice since the 1950s. Record labels are in the business of making money, and if they're going to use artificial streams to boost one song, why wouldn't they use that for all potential hits? Why not blow up all songs in the name of making money, in the name of creating a bigger buzz around their artists? Why would they choose Kendrick Lamar over Drake? Why would they do anything to harm the well-being of the work of one artist over another? It really doesn't make sense. And if you don't know the structure of the labels, maybe you're like, yeah, maybe Kendrick's label did do this. However, at the end of the day, both OVO and PG Lang eventually report back to Universal. The second lawsuit was aimed at UMG, claiming that they should have taken action to prevent Kendrick from releasing Not Like Us, knowing that he would use the song to accuse Drake of pedophilia. The petition reads, UMG could have refused to release or distribute the song or required the offending material to be edited and or removed, but UMG chose to do the opposite. UMG designed, financed, and then executed a plan to turn Not Like Us into a viral mega hit with the intent of using the spectacle of harm to Drake and his businesses to drive consumer hysteria and, of course, massive revenues. That plan succeeded, likely beyond UMG's wildest dreams. Drake and his legal team are certainly correct about two things here. Not Like Us was a viral mega hit, and UMG did execute a plan to drive revenue. After all, like I said, they are in the business of making money. This is essentially a conflict between the ideas of slander and freedom of expression and speech. While other works of art have been challenged in slander, overwhelmingly the courts tend to historically side with the artists, as to do otherwise would set a dangerous precedent that would prove highly dangerous to the protection of free speech and expression. In the lyrical and artistic setting, this would enable corporations to dictate what is said on a recording out of fear of future lawsuits. The fact that Drake would go down this road is incredibly petty. The dude lost a rap battle and decided to call HR. He called his mom. He called the police. Whatever you want to say, he lost, and he called for corporate attention. He lost in a battle where he claimed he was more of the streets and of gangster culture than Kendrick was, and instead he filed a case with the courts. Additionally, he spent most of this time beefing, saying that he was better because his numbers were higher, and the moment that Kendrick achieved greater numbers, he sought legal action rather than accepting that maybe Kendrick is capable of doing the same. If you felt that Drake had any credibility in the beef, this should truly remove 100% of it. This also supports the line, cease and desist on the Like That record, ho what you ain't like that record, from Euphoria, where Kendrick claimed Drake sent a cease and desist for his verse on Like That. The consequences of such a lawsuit, however, go beyond the beef, as these, particularly the second lawsuit, would be a massive challenge towards freedom of speech and expression. Should he win this legal case, this will set a dangerous precedent where artists could be held legally accountable in civil court for what they say, further creating a cycle of institutionalized censorship as labels attempt to prevent further lawsuits by forcing artists to alter their work ahead of release. This is an attack on art for the sake of saving face. On December 20th, the first hearing was to be held but was postponed to January 13th due to a miscommunication. With this, Drake has officially admitted defeat in the pettiest, most Drake way imaginable, giving us all a masterclass in how not to take an L. So once again, let's actually talk about the album. GNX stands as a unique entry into Kendrick's catalog. It is the first major album not to follow a direct narrative, marking a departure from his run of concept albums. Instead, I would argue that GNX is thematically heavy, with a handful of themes that run throughout the album, unifying it all together. But there is no defining narrative that was seen in the likes of Good Kid, Mad City, or To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, or Mr. Morale. On the surface, GNX is simply an impressive body of work that is not concerned with making a major statement. And while certainly less ambitious than his previous works, this makes it no lesser. I would argue, in fact, that this is significantly stronger than not only Mr. Morale, but is more of an exciting album than even Damn. That's, of course, a claim that I'm hesitant to make given how well regarded and amazing Damn was, but I think I like this record better than that one, making for Kendrick's strongest record release since 2015's To Pimp a Butterfly. This time around, Kendrick seems more concerned with making a classic West Coast sounding hip-hop record than grappling with a greater narrative of introspective and universal proportions. As a result, GNX is lean, it's mean, it's aggressive, yet sleek. The album is undeniably West Coast. The arrangements are pulled back, hooky, and streamlined, allowing the listener to vibe with the beat and focus on the lyricism. Contextually, GNX soars largely due to its relation with the beef. Kendrick alludes to it, he refers to it indirectly on numerous occasions, but is more focused on the future. Still, the album is as much about the beef as it is not. He writes and raps like a man emerging from a state of conflict as he deals with the consequences and the fallout from the first half of the year. In this sense, GNX does not exist without the beef, despite not explicitly being about the beef. Additionally, with the lack of a significant and overt concept, GNX is Kendrick's most accessible body of work to date, likely designed that way consciously as a means of reaching a new generation of listeners that he's earned through the increased visibility of the year. Accessible in this case, however, does not mean dumbed down. It's an important distinction. GNX is an album that you could throw on shuffle and enjoy, however, it still manages to reach a greater depth despite the lack of an explicit narrative. The thematic nature of the album runs throughout its 12 songs on a more subtle level, something that is hinted at in the GNX trailer when Kendrick raps, "Reincarnated with love, my Gemini twin back powering up. No more handshakes and hugs, this energy only circulating through us. Everybody must be judged, but this time, God only favoring us." On one hand, Kendrick seeks to burn down the existing industry with a brutal level of precision, while also celebrating a culture and legacy of greatness that is hip-hop, and, to a greater extent, Black excellence. There is a division and unification that we can see that the ideas established earlier in the year, ideas of community and celebration alongside anti-establishment rhetoric, re-emerge stronger than ever before, giving a greater level of clarity to what Kendrick was aiming at to achieve this year. While many are calling this a final round in the victory lap, GNX marks a major step forward as Kendrick further removes himself from the rap beef that defined 2024 towards what is likely to be a greater 2025. Ultimately, this is an album that documents a cycle of reincarnation as we see Kendrick continue to evolve his artistry amid a spurt of personal growth and further development of his character. While the album does not move through the themes in a linear fashion, the album clearly opens on an aggressive note targeted towards the entertainment industry. The theme of defiance is first introduced on the opening song, Whacked Out Murals, a reflection of a tumultuous year. The song is highly cinematic, very climactic, very intense, and it opens with vocals from Daria Barrera, a Los Angeles-based Spanish singer who Kendrick saw after she had performed the national anthem at Game 1 of the World Series between the Dodgers and the Yankees on October 25th, meaning her additions to the album, as she is featured throughout the length of GNX, were added within a month of the record's release, something that should leave us all curious as to how quickly GNX came together. Building off of this idea, as the title suggests, a mural of Kendrick Lamar was defaced, and this incident occurred on September 8th of this year. Again, leaving me to wonder if Whacked Out Murals was a very late addition to the record, or if this was almost like the tipping point that sparked a creative bender of a weekend of making this incredible record. I don't know, and I'm very curious to learn more about the recording of this album and the timeline. And additionally, if Barrera's contributions were added later, were those just added on to the fronts of the songs where she's featured, or were songs built in order for her to be featured upon? A lot of curiosity on this level. Regardless, Kendrick is obviously operating at a very rapid, very impressive clip that, despite its speed, does not sacrifice intention and attention to detail alongside quality. We've also similarly seen a very rapid succession of output from Kendrick with The Beef, with songs that he had recorded and released, sometimes dropping a day apart. One of them dropping Meet the Grams, dropping 30 minutes after Drake's Family Matters, only for Not Like Us to drop the next day. We know that this is a rate that Kendrick can deliver upon, which is certainly incredibly impressive. As stated, Whacked Out Murals literally draws its subject material from someone defacing a mural of Kendrick in Compton. Of course, murals don't concern Kendrick Lamar. However, he uses the idea of defacing a mural as a metaphor for the criticisms that he has received in what was supposed to be a triumphant year. He uses this almost as a launching pad. And despite the title of the song, despite the opening line, "Somebody whacked out my mural," the song isn't about a whacked out mural, right? It's looking at wrongs that have been done by him and keeping score of those wrongs. It's a really interesting metaphor. The song gives the listener to Kendrick's mindset as a man on the offensive in the perseverance of his own inner peace. Lines like, "I'll kill 'em all before I let 'em kill my joy. I done been through it all, what you endure. It used to be fuck that, but now it's plural. Fuck everybody that's on my body. My blick first, then God got me." Blick, of course, being a gun. From the first verse, this is demonstrated. The idea of a mindset, the preservation of a mindset, is continued with the lines. I made a line there which he actually self-censors himself. He cuts it off, similar to what we heard in Watch the Party Die. Again, curious as to what was supposed to be said there, what Kendrick is omitting. Is it a line that he's like, I'm not ready to cross that line, so he cuts it out? Is it a legal implication? Again, see As We Speak, Rap Music on Trial for more context. Curious already, like within the first verse of the song, there is so much curiosity to how Kendrick is operating and why he's making certain choices. However, he continues after cutting himself off. He continues, "I never lost who I am for a rap image. It's motivation if you wonder how I did it." Later on, he adds, "Against all odds, I squabbled up for them dividends," speaking to how he's earned his place in rap and pop culture. There's a longing for peace, inner and outer, and a longing for change. There's a desire to be recognized for his hard work. There's a desire to encourage people to hustle hard. The chorus develops an idea of integrity and understanding self-worth with lines like, "Know you a god even when they say you ain't," and "Never let no one put smut up on your name." The second verse references other slights Kendrick has felt, including the hate he's received for earning the Super Bowl slot and Snoop sharing Drake's AI-infused track, Tailor Made Freestyle. Kendrick says he hoped that it was just the edibles and that he had to let that one go, and Snoop has since confirmed that it was, in fact, the edibles. Kendrick admits he's happy to stay in his own lane, but is also happy to cut into yours if you take aim at him publicly. While not directly referencing the beef, Kendrick makes himself very clear with lines like, I never pieced it up, that shit don't sit well with me. Before I take a truce, I'll take 'em to hell with me. Such a powerful line, such an incredible delivery. For those hoping that the beef will be reinstigated, I really think Kendrick is beyond that. But we saw the levels that he was willing to go to on Not Like Us, on Meet the Grams. We saw those levels, and that conviction, that intensity is still so present. Again, Whacked Out Mural sees Kendrick take the offense, and without a single, this is the first track you're supposed to hear upon the album's drop. It's a statement of intent. It's a statement of what he wants versus the position that other people put him in. It's a rationalization for earlier in the year and a warning for those who seek to continue the fight. Very much Whacked Out Murals feels like a prologue that is designed to set the tone for the album. At one point, he even raps, fuck a double entendre, I want y'all to feel this shit. Speaking to the notion of making an overtly more accessible album, leaving the nuances and subtleties lingering below the surface, waiting to boil over. Of course, no Kendrick album is as simple as it seems, and even when you know it's complex, it goes so much deeper. GNX is an incredibly nuanced record, and despite his claims, fuck a double entendre, there is so much entendre-ing across this record, and that's what we're here for. Additionally, he uses the song to reintroduce the themes discussed on Watch the Party Die. Kendrick in the final verse raps, okay, fuck your hip-hop, I watch the party just die. Cackling about while all y'all's on trial. Thought I was antisocial when I stayed inside my house. You better off to have one woman, everything tricky right now. You live in denial. A fuck anybody empathetic to the other side, I vow. He continues later on, make Cat Williams and them proud, the truth about to get loud. Williams is, of course, an incredible comic. And he went viral earlier this year for a very candid interview where he ousted numerous celebrities for their problematic and sometimes illicit behavior over a near 3-hour conversation. Like Williams, Kendrick is looking to popularize and uncover a mythology we often exchange for fantasy, the truth. In this verse, Kendrick is directly referencing the line of thought that he instigated on Watch the Party Die, and it is impossible not to assume that he is directly referring to Diddy and what Diddy represents, the industry, the parties, all of that idea. Most interesting to me is the first few words, fuck your hip hop. Is this, on one hand, Kendrick saying what's going on right now in the world is so much more important than music? Or rather, is the emphasis in this line on the your? Fuck your hip hop. Your hip hop is toxic. Your hip hop is weighed down by hedonistic intentions and materialistic motivators. Your hip hop capitalizes on the vulnerability of others, exploiting them for your own pleasures. Your hip hop is not Kendrick's hip hop, and he is seeking to move the genre and the culture forward. This is, I would say, one of the most important lines on the song, and it's a line that could be used at so many different points on the album as a reminder. But of course, Kendrick's not here to beat the message over your head. It's there for you to uncover it if you want to. But fuck your hip hop is such an important line for understanding the cultural and social significance of what Kendrick is trying to do here. The song ends with a final call to arms, a final invitation to any would-be challengers, to any naysayers. Whack the murals out, but it ain't no legend if my legend ends. Like I said, Kendrick doesn't care about a mural that's defaced. He doesn't need a mural. The legend continues with or without these tributes. And over the next 11 songs, he's going to show you exactly why. Through Whacked Out Murals, we see Kendrick all too happy to burn it all down with the goal of walking away into a new world. He uses the ideas of Drake and Diddy as symbols of the industry as a whole, and it's such a brilliant use of characterization and symbolism. And he's looking to expose them both as individuals while also tying them back to a multi-billion-dollar industry that is happy to enable them however they want, so long as they keep the cash flowing up the ladder. By not referencing Drake, Diddy, or the industry by name, Kendrick effectively uses them as almost like a set piece, almost like the idea of world building. They represent what Kendrick is hoping to evolve the genre past. In order for reinvention to be significant, we must understand what we are removing ourselves from. Reincarnation does not exist in a stagnant state. There is what was before and what is yet to come, and Whacked Out Murals sets the stage as to where we are starting from on this journey. On track 3, Luther, a ballad that opens with Spanish guitar just at the very beginning before a neo-soul groove comes into play. This is one of 2 of Kamasi Washington's produced tracks. The song itself leans in more of an R&B ballad, with SZA heavily featured as she duets with Kendrick. Getting its name likely from Luther Vandross, the song uses the vocal hook from his song with Cheryl Lynn, If This World Were Mine. Lyrically, the song seems like an ode to a lover, one where Kendrick claims there isn't anything he wouldn't do for them. Given that his infidelities were outlined heavily on his previous album and the current state of his relationship with Whitney was prominently challenged within the beef, Luther serves as a moment of closure to both of these threads, with Kendrick reaffirming his love for his longtime fiancée and the mother of his children. Following the Vandross hook that sings, If This World Were Mine, Kendrick discusses everything he would do for the subject of the song, most primarily taking their dreams and making them multiply, and introducing their enemies to the light of God. There is a greater vision for a new world, one where pain and conflict are lifted with a desire for growth and connection. And of course, this is personal growth, this is communal growth, this is the growth of you and your immediate surroundings, your immediate circle, but also your community and like a greater community as a whole. There's vulnerability, there's harmony, and there's this goal of making the world a better place for this loved one. It's a really sweet song, but I don't want to go deeper into it without giving things away. So the idea of Luther is central to the album. And of course, the contrast to Whacked Out Murals is heavy, right? We're 3 songs in, and we went from a song that was all about defying the industry, right? Taking aim at some of the most popular and biggest predators that the industry has, to a song that's all about reaffirming his faith and love for a loved one, right? For a lover, for what we assume to be his fiance. And not only loving this person, but wanting the world to be a better place for them and wanting to take action himself to better the world for them, whether that be action of self-growth or, you know, like benefiting the community, the surrounding community for them. All of this will become much clearer once we reach the conclusion of this thematic analysis. From here, we jump ahead to track 6, Reincarnated. If Whacked Out Murals established where we're coming from, if Luther established a desire, a longing for change for not only oneself, but for the betterment of a lover, for a community, for anyone, then Reincarnated is a song where we actually see that process. And of course, this isn't really a literal reincarnation. There's a bit more to it. There's a bit more metaphors at play here. In the previous song, Man at the Garden, Kendrick establishes that conflict is necessary for change. Therefore, Reincarnated stands as a representation of the actual process of being reborn. The song opens again with Spanish vocals from Daria Barrera, sonically linking the song directly to Whacked Out Murals, but also we saw the emergence of the Spanish guitar at the beginning of Luther. Hence why we're jumping around the way we are, track 1, 3, and now 6. The song is built entirely upon a beat sampled from Tupac's Made from the 1997 gang-related movie soundtrack. Reincarnated is built entirely on this sample using the same drums and greatly upping the piano so that it takes the lead rather than just sitting in the background, and throwing the funky arpeggiated guitar only in between verses. It's a really cool effect and really just demonstrates a really cool way of simple rearranging and reorchestrating an already existing sample. Given that the song is titled Reincarnated, it only seems natural for Kendrick to rap over a Pac beat, especially given how Kendrick has always cited him as his biggest inspiration and has developed a close connection with the Pac estate. On Mortal Man, the closing song off of To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick, of course, is in an edited conversation with Pac from a unearthed, archival, never before heard interview starring Pac. And it really felt like this passing the torch moment of ideologies, of time, of culture, of music. It was a really cool moment. But also, but from there to rapping over this beat, we could see the continuation of this legacy of Pac and his influence on Kendrick Lamar. Further testament to this is that no one seems to call this a stretch or has claimed that Kendrick is forcing a connection between his work and Pac's. This seems like a natural fit, and even the likes of Snoop, Dre, and Cube have all supported Kendrick as the modern king of the West Coast. If it felt that Kendrick was forcing this connection, that he likes Pac, that he was influenced by Pac, that he wants to sound like Pac, there would be a lot of feedback to that. Instead, it just fits, right? There's no one that is denying this claim. And the way that he has introduced elements of Pac's work, mindset, ideas, lyrical influences, musical influences into his own work is done really tastefully and really interestingly. It's not done in a way that's like, look at this sample from Tupac. It's done very much subtly. This is, in fact, Reincarnated is probably the most overt way, next to, of course, having Pac in conversation on To Pimp a Butterfly. But again, it's done in a really interesting, really cool way. Lyrically, the song discusses a myriad of Black narratives, painting generations of experiences centered around Black artists and the struggle to avoid the trappings and temptations that go hand in hand with these lifestyles. His lyrics give enough details to imply different artists at the center of these stories, but not nearly enough details to confidently identify them. You get the sense that these are, in fact, real narratives, but they truly could be that of anyone, not specific to any one person, but rather creating a feeling of universalism to these narratives. For example, when referencing the Chitlin Circuit, a series of white-owned Eastern, Southern, and Midwestern theaters that would actually book Black artists from the 20s to the 60s, the first guess that comes to mind is Billie Holiday, but it could apply to any early R&B female singers. While the guitarist from the first verse is to be assumed as any Southern blues guitarist. I've seen John Lee Hooker's name floating around in this discussion, but there's no specific evidence to directly connect this to him other than him heralding from Michigan in 1947. Kendrick's first line of the song established that the plot that he is going for as he raps with this Pac-esque flow. I got this fire burning in me from within, concentrated thoughts on who I used to be, I'm shedding skin. Every day a new version of me, a third of me demented, cemented in pain, juggling the pros and cons of fame. Each narrative introduced, we see a character heralded for their talents and abilities, yet they struggled not to succumb to the temptations of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the time. Through this, we see tangible struggles repeated throughout history, similar to what is introduced at Man in the Garden. More on that later. We can see that reconciling these temptations and the weight of expectations, internal and external, can often leave artists who sought to lead change unable to fulfill this purpose. Within hip-hop in the last decade, we could see less concerns for lyrics and messages of substance, rather a young generation that is more concerned with said temptations. This is a theme that Kendrick has played with on multiple occasions, whether it be the trappings of street culture on Good Kid, Mad City, or the temptations of fame and celebrity on To Pimp a Butterfly, as personified by Lucy, who is in fact a metaphor for Lucifer. In both instances, these act as foils to greater purposes that serve a larger collective. And we see this theme reintroduced on Reincarnated, the idea that these things that come along with an artistic lifestyle and touring and fame and success and money may seem great, but they are in fact distractions. They are in fact things that will pull you away from a greater purpose that allows for you to serve a greater community than just yourself. This leads us to the final verse on the song, in which Kendrick manipulates his voice to have a dialogue with himself, playing a godlike figure. In actuality, you can see this as a spiritual experience or simply a little bit of honesty as he further grapples with the contradictions within himself, this time showing more accountability rather than the insecurities introduced on Man of the Garden. This very well could be Kendrick having this internal conversation, this internal monologue. It very well could be Kendrick speaking to God. He introduces the verse with, "My present life is Kendrick Lamar, a rapper looking at the lyrics to keep you in awe. The only factor I respected was raising the bar." So we know at this point now he is in fact talking about himself rather than the previous two verses. As this back and forth continues, ideas like forgiveness and the duality of Kendrick's pushing peace in LA, as he puts it, despite loving war, as the other figure is quick to point out, are at the center of this conversation. This figure seems to forgive Kendrick for his wrongdoings, with Kendrick leaving us with this line, "I learned a lot, no more putting those people in fear. The more that word is diminished, the more it's not real. The more light that I capture, the more I can feel. I'm using words for inspiration as an idea." He continues with more interjections from the second voice. "I promise that I'll use my gifts to bring understanding. I vow my life just to live one in harmony now, and I'm ashamed that I ever created that enemy." This is the center of an album that is not explicitly about the rap war and yet could not exist without it. You cannot have these reflections, the urge to change, without changing from a previous context. And we see that developed here on Reincarnation. We see the idea that there was a level that Kendrick stepped towards in terms of defeating Drake, in terms of winning the rap beef. And on this album, we see two conflicting ideas. On Whacked Out Murals, we see him discuss the idea that he'll do it again if it's in the name of preserving his peace and his integrity and that of his family. But we also see on Reincarnated that that's not him, right? That's not who he wants to be. And he wants to aspire to be greater, not only for himself, but for his family, for his community, for the culture as a whole. And the culture shouldn't celebrate these victories the way that they do. It's very much not about the beef. It's very much centered around Kendrick, but again, coming from that context, the same context that's introduced on Whacked Out Murals. While Kendrick uses literal reincarnation to demonstrate his point, the idea of a greater lineage to culture and subculture is very important and is central to this song. Rap music is an innovation on generations of creativity, vision, and excellence that exceeds the 51 years of its existence. Were it not for funk, the early performative roots of the genre would not have existed as they were, and funk, of course, is an extension of both early pop and jazz. Jazz goes back to the blues, which has its roots in the Baptist Church in 1865. And of course, this lines up with the end of the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, the freeing of the slaves. The Baptist Church rises in popularity at this time because spirituality and Christianity was something that was one of the few things provided for slaves living on plantations. So it acts as a communal thing where African Americans, now freed, can come together in this communal and spiritual place. And the blues really kind of kicks off out of that tradition, but also aligns with the advancements of the railways that travel across the country, and where the Gibson factory starts sending out guitars across the railways, allowing for cheaper, more cost-effective instruments to make their way to communities that otherwise would never actually have music stores. We could see that there's a long tradition of social factors that are constantly at play when it comes to music, but we could see that hip-hop has a far greater lineage than hip-hop. And that is the main, I shouldn't say the main, that is one of the main ideas present in reincarnation. This not literal form of transitioning, but rather looking at this lineage and the influences and the things that have affected your past that contribute to who you are now, that contribute to the culture. The idea that the culture is changing, the culture is absorbing all of these things. But of course, the culture didn't start with hip hop 51 years ago. The culture has been developing and growing forever. And that's a really interesting way of looking at these ideas of culture, right? And again, if Kendrick is in fact fighting for the soul of the culture, he here on Reincarnated is invoking that idea of this incredible heritage, this rich heritage that has seen incredible success stories, that has seen incredible artistry and excellence and people, but has also seen suffering alongside of that, and that the culture sometimes needs someone from within to come along and guide it away from that suffering, from those temptations. Kendrick uses ambiguity to paint a heritage of narratives that truly could be anyone, not to create his own lineage of reincarnation, but to demonstrate a rich culture that remains ever moving. The track is highly effective as it plays with this notion, along with Kendrick's own personal metamorphosis that he is currently exercising on GNX. Again, the album is supposed to be heard in order as it was released, and we are witnessing transformation of self for the betterment of community. Reincarnation represents, particularly that last verse, that conversation with a spiritual entity. We are representing no longer a desire for change, but the actual step into changing oneself. We see this idea of stepping into a new life on The Heart Part 6, a song that once again comes with a Spanish guitar intro similar to Luther, and yes, we are jumping ahead of a few tracks to get to this point. The title comes preloaded. The Heart series is signature to Kendrick, and his previous edition, The Heart Part 5, dropped in 2022, a week before Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers would be released. Infamously, however, the final track of the rap beef saw Drake hijack this series, releasing his own song titled The Heart Part 6. As previously discussed here and beforehand, the song sounds like it was written by the ghostwriter's understudy. The most teeth it had were actually just the title. Here on GNX, Kendrick has reclaimed what was stolen from him. There's an anti-colonialism rhetoric somewhere in there, given that he called Drake a colonizer on Not Like Us. But we see Kendrick reclaim this on a song that has absolutely nothing to do with Drake. Upon seeing the title on the album, you might think that this is designed to restart the beef, but it's really not. It has nothing to do with Drake. It couldn't be more farther removed from that. Not only is it one thing for Drake to never be mentioned by name on the album, but The Heart Part 6 has nothing to do with him. For someone that gives off the energy that he'll do anything to keep his name in the conversation, see his recent lawsuits if you need evidence of that, this must have been the biggest slap in the face. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this pissed off Drake more than being called a pedophile. Instead, The Heart Part 6 sees Kendrick take what he has learned on Man at the Garden and Reincarnated and apply it to his own life. He reminisces about the early days looking up to Ab-Soul and J-Rock and first meeting Schoolboy Q. He discusses the support he's seen from Top Dog, from Dave Free, Punch, and Soundwave, and credits them for so much of his success. And furthermore, he laments that Black Hippie, a collective of Kendrick Soul, Rock, and Q, never panned out, accepting the blame, and remembers D-Man, an unknown friend who passed. He closes this uplifting song with a message of kindness, rapping, "To all my young, let me be the demonstration how to conduct differences with a healthy conversation. If that's your family, then handle it as such. Don't let the socials gas you up or let emotions be your crutch. Pick up the phone and bust it up before the history is lost. Hand-to-hand shake is good when you have a heart-to-heart." Again, there is a message here of engaging with what is real. Social media is entirely artificial and only carries a weight that we prescribe to it. Having the conversations, the hard conversations especially, are, well, hard. But they're important steps towards healing. They're important steps for yourself, for the others involved. They're meaningful. There isn't much more to say about The Heart Part 6. The song is very autobiographical, following a humble Kendrick through his early career, and it's worth mentioning only because it connects the song to the idea of reincarnation through that it is a measurable step taken forward after committing to change. Recognizing and reconciling past wrongdoings and the work, the influence, the effect other people have had on you is just so important to living a kinder, more intentional and present lifestyle. And again, it just reaffirms the idea of personal growth to benefit that immediate circle and beyond, right? If we all rise, we all rise up together. While there are songs we haven't discussed, and they'll be coming very soon, the album closes with Gloria. Opening with one final Spanish intro from Barrera, the song is a groovy Latin-inspired R&B track with Kendrick delivering a mellow flow over the warm tones of the flamenco acoustic guitar heard throughout the record. Gloria serves as a moment of revelation that ties the album together. Musically, we see the return of the Latin beat, this time appearing in full form rather than a separate intro added in front of the song itself, particularly with the Spanish guitar. Again, we've heard the Spanish guitar twice now, in front of Luther and in front of The Heart Part 6. This is the first time that this guitar is actually a part of the song rather than stuck at the beginning. Lyrically, the song expands the meaning of much of the entire record, and thematically, it feels like the direct extension of Luther, not only because of another major feature from SZA or the use of more organic instrumentation in R&B stylings, but lyrically, Gloria sees Kendrick continue to discuss his relationship with what is assumed to be Whitney. The opening line goes, "Me and my bitch got a complicated relationship. She's so controlling, I notice it ain't no playing with. I met her when I was off the porch as a teenager. She said one day I would right my wrongs and see paper. We started out young, looking for some identity, made 1,000 mistakes. But never did we lack chemistry." Given how Kendrick and Whitney are in fact high school sweethearts, and Kendrick has expressed the low points in their relationship before, this tracks. Kendrick paints a love story for the ages, one that is all-consuming through the ups and downs, with SZA delivering a strong chorus melody, singing, "Scared of forever, you know nothing else is gonna pass. I just gotta let you know, whenever you want me, you got me till the end of time." As the song comes to a conclusion and Kendrick's flow grows more intense, he begins to throw up simple double entendres, kind of punny stuff, almost as though he wants you to see the trick before he reveals it himself. Lines like, "I know your favorite movie, is it The Notebook?" Logical explanations don't exist, flipping pages, chapter after chapter, probably remarry and head to Vegas, bitches getting marked out, they can't erase our history. They margins ain't big enough, they all led by bigotry, my woman and my right hand, my saint and my sin. Here he delivers a single line reveal that shifts the tone of the album entirely. Before this line, the idea of reincarnation is present. The idea of reincarnating and benefiting that of your inner circle, whether it be your closest friends, your closest associates, your partner, is very clear. But with this one line, Kendrick implies a far more universal approach to GNX. He raps, closing out the album, "Ain't no bitch like my bitch, 'cause that bitch been my pen." The subject of his love, his tension, his ambition in Gloria is not, in fact, Whitney, his fiancée, his high school sweetheart, the mother of his children, but rather hip-hop itself. Now, Kendrick isn't the first rapper to pull this. Eminem and Lil Wayne have both done this, just as Too Short, who may have been the first in 2003 with his song Married to the Game. However, Kendrick is going further than saying he loves hip-hop and that rap is all that he has, as those previous artists have basically done. Let's take a step back and tie Gloria to Luther, another song with a nameless lover at the center of the story. If Kendrick's love is hip-hop, then it is reasonable to connect that as a continuation to the message of Luther, that he would do anything in striving to make a better world for his love. In this case, it's not only hip-hop, but it's the culture. Despite his problems with the culture and the hate he may receive, Kendrick loves hip-hop. He loves the legacy it has come from, and he loves the communities of people that engage with it and continue to challenge and innovate it, but he wants more for it. With this single line, we can see that GNX is not only Kendrick engaging in deeper personal growth, but he is attempting to use his message of positivity to shift hip-hop and the culture to better places, to uplift rather than continue to engage with the temptations that are currently keeping the culture down. Now, having looked at 5 of the 12 songs on GNX, all of which have featured a Spanish intro either in the forms of Barrera's vocals or a guitar, let's piece this all together. The remaining tracks on this album, of course, play into this. However, the main message of departing from a place of problematic hedonism through personal and communal reincarnation with the aims of escaping to a greater place is best seen through these 5 songs. If GNX was an EP, this message would carry through just off of the backs of Whacked Out Murals, Luther, Reincarnated, The Heart Part 6, and Gloria. However, the rest of the album serves to further demonstrate the nuances to these ideas. The use of the Spanish motif is brilliant, allowing for Kendrick to signal that there is a greater connection between these songs than you may think. GNX is not an overtly complex album, almost as though Kendrick heard the criticisms that he received on Mr. Morale. Instead, GNX is banger after banger. You do not need to steep yourself in a greater meaning to enjoy this one. It's a straight-up West Coast bop. Despite not being complex, however, the Spanish motif is Kendrick challenging those who dig deep into his music to look here. He's not beating us over the head with it, instead just pointing us in the right direction. The use of a musical motif to hint at lyrical symbolism, themes, and narrative is brilliant. And something that he has in fact done in the past with the skits on Good Kid, Mad City and the spoken word on To Pimp a Butterfly, although those are much more explicit in their messages, both the messages of the album and the messages of the motifs. However, on Mr. Morale, there is the more subtle tap dancing that is heard between songs. If we look at these 5 songs alone, Whacked Out Murals sets the stage of an existing problem, a conflict of values between Kendrick and the culture. Luther introduces a protagonist who expresses the desire to create meaningful and tangible change for the item of their desire, in this case, the culture. Reincarnation represents a moment of personal growth and defying intergenerational trauma for the better of all around. The Heart Part 6 is all about righting past wrongs, holding yourself accountable, and taking those steps towards healing. And Gloria is the moment that ties it together, inviting the culture with him despite their rocky history. It's a unique story that supports the notion that Kendrick is representing the spirit of hip hop, the culture in the purest of forms. The rest of the record fleshed these ideas out far more, um, demonstrating that despite what seems like a simple bop for bop record is actually full of nuances and is much more intricate, and I would argue so ambitious, because Kendrick is not hinting at it. He's not telling us that there's more to it. And beyond the motifs, there's very little to tell us that there is a greater meaning to it, unlike Good Kid, Mad City, Mr. Morale, To Pimp a Butterfly. I would argue that in its simplicity lies a greater level of ambition, making this among his most complex work just because he's tried to hide the complexities. And he's done such an effective job of hiding it that it seems organic rather than contrived. If GNX was in fact an EP of these 5 songs, it would make for a cool concept, although it would feel much more explicit. Again, the motif would be much in your face. These songs back to back would leave you thinking and seeing those immediate connections. The inclusion of the remaining 7 songs that make up GNX really bury the message. They muddle it a bit, but it's effectively done. Kendrick uses the additional songs to get into the more meaningful, nitty-gritty nuances of it all, allowing for him to examine this in a far more substantial and genuine way, while also muddying the waters a bit, making GNX feel as though it is without a dominant message. There is a lot to unpack with this record. GNX is as much about separating itself and the culture from where it was as it is about unity. We see the two extremes of these ideas best in the back-to-back delivery of Whacked Out Murals and Squabble Up, a pair of songs deliberately placed side by side to open the album, acting like a thesis. The former introduces a division among the culture, the key line being "fuck your hip-hop," again with the emphasis on your. If your hip-hop is predatory, if your hip-hop is manipulative, if your hip-hop is abusive, if your hip-hop is oppressive, then it needs to be left behind. Fuck your hip-hop. I watched the party just die. Without explicitly naming names, events, or incidents, Kendrick has made this much clearer almost in a threatening way. If pushed, he will continue forward down this path of Whacked Out Murals. The fact that this song follows an unofficial release of Watch the Party Die further incites these notions, and these of course follow the stunning confessionals of Mother I Sober from Mr. Morale, a song that sees him take on a mantle of defending those abused and pushing for communal healing against intergenerational trauma, on an album that sees Kendrick largely reject the savior complex bestowed upon him. Perhaps it was in that moment, in the years of therapy that he sought for his own transgressions against his family, where the seeds of GNX were first planted. Kendrick will happily walk away from it all if that's what the culture wants. However, GNX, for all its aggression, is uplifting and soars for a greater tone of positivity. Kendrick will burn it all down himself and leave the game and culture behind if they won't follow. However, he wants to serve the culture in hopes that it can be elevated along with him. And further setting the tone, the opening lyrics sung by Barrera translate to, "I feel your presence here, the night of last night," and we begin to cry. Kendrick mourns for the culture. The first thing we hear is almost a message of loss, of longing for love that is gone, for love that is changed. Kendrick mourns for the culture. He feels the pain and the suffering of the community, of the culture, and feels the urge to act upon it, not for his vanity, but for others. As the second song on the album, Squabble Up serves as a counterweight to the musical and lyrical heaviness of the opener. Squabble Up serves as an immediate chaser to the opening song. It's a carefully crafted anthem built around a hook sampled from Debbie Deb's 1983 When I Hear Music. It's catchy as all hell, and it's got a sweet bounce to it. The song opens with the infamous broccoli clip teased at the beginning of Not Like Us, the music video with Kendrick rapping, "God knows I'm reincarnated, I was stargazing, life goes on, and I need all my babies." Again, seeing that immediate reference to a desire for change through reincarnation, something that is also referenced lyrically in the GNX trailer. The placement of Squabble Up in context of Whacked Out Murals is powerful. The song is the true first chapter of GNX, with Kendrick seeking to depart from the prelude. If Whacked Out Murals is Kendrick condemning those who would do wrong and would challenge him, then Squabble Up is a celebration of black culture, music, and excellence. This is most apparent in the music video. Visually, right off the bat, the video pays homage to the next movement, the 1999 track From the Roots, with Squabble Up shot in a room nearly identical in layout and coloring, a distinctive tone of green compared to the unique tone of yellow used in the Roots video. This stands as a unique choice, as Questlove was vocally against the Kendrick-Drake beef, even saying hip-hop was dead in the wake of this conflict, leaving me to believe that Kendrick is posing the challenge back to Questlove that he himself is hip-hop embodied and that the culture persists, the culture continues, despite its struggles, despite the misstep that was this conflict. In some sense, it's not only a challenge, an invitation to continue the conversation, but it is a little bit of admitting like maybe Quest is right in that things did get out of hand and could have gone significantly worse. Questlove highlighted the tribute thanking Kendrick, saying in a post on Instagram, "My number one love is the music I create in the roots. That is the fuel to my fire, and sometimes if you love something, you must set it free. Then if it returns to you, it's real. That said, I want to thank Kendrick Lamar for acknowledging something I thought no one saw or cared about." Through the Roots, we could see a much wider representation of the culture, right? This isn't just a celebration of the most popular elements of hip hop, but it's looking at these niche elements that make the culture, because of course culture is everything that we do. It's not the big, it's not the most recognizable elements. It's everything, right? Everything we do contributes to the continuation of a culture, no matter how big or small the effect that it has. The video features a series of still shots, still camera shots, each with various tableaus unfolding. The shots only change with cuts that zoom in on the individual scenes, but again, the camera remains entirely still after each cut, allowing for the scene to play out and engage the viewer for the value it brings to the scene itself, not how it was shown or edited or displayed through a moving camera. In addition to the Roots, further tributes are played out. We see Nate Dogg's G-Funk Classics Volumes 1 and 2 through a massive cutout of the disc hanging in the center of the room at one point. At another moment, a woman facing the wall wearing only red heels and a white thong and armed with a shotgun is a direct reference to the artwork of Ice-T's 1988 album Power. Additionally, a man dressed in a striped robe shares a striking resemblance to Isaac Hayes' Black Moses artwork. And behind him, we see a board with scrambled letters flanked by dancers in attire reminiscent of Soul Train as they attempt to solve the puzzle, much like a game that they would have had on the show. So far, at the time of writing and recording, no one has actually made a convincing call as to what the scrambled pile of letters could mean, but many have attempted to connect it to a date of a subsequent album release, all of which so far have been false. However, the dancers spell out some of the letters to read the Latin phrase, "Omnia essa liquid," which translates to "everything is something." I know the pronunciation on that was impeccable. Black cinema is also cited throughout the video. We see brass knuckles that read "Hood Love," a nod to a similar set of knuckles featured in Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing," just as a toddler wearing an orange windbreaker and a Pistons hat riding a big wheel is a nod to Menace to Society 2. There are moments where the video goes beyond pop culture as well, with Kendrick holding a sign that reads "Jesus Saves Gangsters 2," with the same font and color scheme as that of an LA-based outreach ministry, just as a freeway sign hangs from the central Compton area can be seen along with a banner for the Compton Christmas Parade. Men sporting different gang colors can be seen dancing in different sections of the room, separate from one another, a nod to what was achieved at the Pop Out concert. On a similar note, in the middle of the video, Kendrick can be seen reading a book titled "How to Be More Like Kendrick for Dummies," a nod to the idea that much of this album is in fact about a rebirth, a reinvention, or perhaps a return to home after losing oneself to conflict. As he's reading this book, a pair of American flags can be seen, only these flags are red, green, and black. The African American flag represents Black freedom, Black unity, and the African diaspora. It was first introduced by Marcus Garvey in 1920. The red symbolizes the bloodshed for liberation, the black affirms the existence of black people as a nation, and the green represents the natural wealth of Africa. Between this and the use of visual unity through bringing rival gangs together, Squabble Up as a visual seeks to introduce a greater sense of unity for the oppressed amid a social, political, and economic system that has sought to control, undermine, minimize, and oppress the various cultures of people of color. Through this music video, Kendrick plays with duality, something he often does with visuals. We can see a street vigil beside a street party, while in another moment, a man training an attack dog can be seen beside a child playing with the hydraulics of a lowrider. Through such visuals and juxtapositions, we can see a wide representation of Californian street culture, speaking to Kendrick's own roots and his continued understanding of inner-city social, political, and cultural dynamics, something Drake criticized Kendrick for not knowing or respecting. In doing such, Kendrick paints a rich mosaic of the experience of people of color and, like all cultures, it is complex and impossible to define. Without seeking to explain it himself, Kendrick has demonstrated a powerful anti-colonial stance through this Squabble Up music video that celebrates LA culture for all of its aspects. A fun fact about the Squabble Up music video: one of the actors from one of the various tableaus has since explained on social media that Kendrick was not actually present for any of this video shoot at all. And in fact, it was an open casting call for people to just come into a hip hop music video. They're given like a similar beat to the song itself, but without any vocals over it. Everyone that was filmed for the Squabble Up music video had zero idea that they were actually starring in what was going to be the next Kendrick Lamar music video, which is just, a great tactic for preventing any leaks, things like that. But the fact that Kendrick was shot in and edited into these scenes afterwards really kind of speaks to the idea that the culture exists with or without him, with or without anyone, really, right? Culture persists, period. And it's just like a really interesting way that kind of plays off of the idea. I know this is purely logistical, but it does play off of that notion that the notion that this very much is a celebration of the culture, and we just have Kendrick showcasing it. The next song, In Need of Examination, and a song that I'm very surprised didn't actually feature a Spanish influence introduction, is Man at the Garden, a song that I have already referenced a handful of times, particularly when looking at Reincarnation, and a song that struck me as centrally important to the album, arguably I would state more important than Reincarnation, but it's also a song that might get slept on for feeling more like a spoken word alongside an ambient beat, an anti-banger, if you will. But the power of this song, the intent, the conviction in Kendrick's performance is tangible. Sit alone in the dark with the volume cranked and tell me Man at the Garden doesn't ignite something in your soul. I would argue that Man at the Garden is not only one of the most important songs for the themes of the album, as Kendrick grapples with his own insecurities surrounding his identity, but it is also one of the strongest songs on GNX. With heavy religious undertones, Man at the Garden sees Kendrick grapple with a lot. His value and worth as an artist, if he deserves the title of being the greatest, his complex feelings towards his idolization as a savior figure, and the complications of survivor's guilt, both of which he has discussed at length in numerous songs across many albums. There's a great deal of imposter syndrome to this song, and perhaps that is what makes it so universally resonating with anyone who has ever questioned what it is that they do. It's dense, complex, and incredibly introspective, and it is a challenging song to break down. The song is set over ambient and solemn landscape with the line, "I deserve it all," repeated every few couplets. On the surface, this may seem very much in line with the bravado and self-gratification that often accompanies rappers. However, the melancholic tone of the song leaves you feeling that this declaration is muddled with insecurities, and in fact, it isn't until the end of the song that it seems Kendrick is confident in this declaration. More often than not, it sounds like he's asking if he deserves it all, or wondering why he does, rather than stating it. Let's start with the title in hopes of determining the message behind this song. There are 3 potential gardens that likely could be referenced. The first is Madison Square Garden, arguably the most renowned stadium in the world, one whose name exceeds the regional recognition of most other stadiums. This could be Kendrick reconciling his place within the music industry, questioning if he has in fact earned this position, if he deserves to be a leader among the genre, and if he has earned the benefits that come along with this. It's curious, but to me, this feels a little too simple given the tone of the song. We can take this on a deeper level and look at the garden as one of the aforementioned biblical references. If we look at the Garden of Eden, for example, Kendrick can assume the role of Adam, someone living in literal paradise, having it all, yet remains tempted by the apple. This could symbolize Kendrick's own inner struggle with balancing his gratitude for what he has and what he has earned with his own ego, ambitions, and greed for more. This idea, resisting the trappings of fame and the expectations society has for a rapper, are seen in the second verse. Because my intentions was pure, even when you wasn't sure, even with every allure, how much temptation you endured. This idea of temptation from paradise is hinting at the narratives that will emerge in the following song, Reincarnated, that we've already discussed. The idea is that to be in such a position, to be in Kendrick's position, is paradise. He has made it to this place that he has sought his life to be in, and yet he wants more. Whether that be materialistic desires or ambitious motivations, he spent his life, his career getting to this point, and still there is a desire for more. And truly, if you are the greatest, what is there more to desire, right? That is the question at the center of this reoccurring line, I deserve it all. Alternatively, we can look at the garden from the perspective of a different biblical reference, looking at the Garden of Gethsemane, the garden where Jesus prayed for the atonement of man before being arrested and crucified the next day. The Garden of Gethsemane is symbolic of agony amid impending finality. Could man at the garden represent an internal struggle as Kendrick attempts to reconcile his own fate after stooping to such a place of anger in order to win a rap battle? Or does it represent a much longer manifestation of survivor's guilt that Kendrick has felt since making out of Compton and the associated trading of the street culture, allowing for him to not only question if he in fact deserves this, but also, and arguably more importantly, why do I deserve this more than anyone else? The religious imagery to the song makes for a far more powerful delivery as Kendrick reconciles celebrity culture with his spiritual values and his own shortcomings against the pedestal his audience has placed him atop. Throughout the song itself, Kendrick is convincing himself he deserves it all, rationalizing this as the song progresses and moves from materialistic desires of the first verse, from a beachfront home, a grand national, private planes and island getaways, to spiritual and physical wants like good health, a better life for his kids, for his mom, spiritual peace. Most notably within the third verse, he admits to wanting to remain influential. He builds to this point throughout the second and third verse, discussing his work ethic and his motives. It's innate to mind my business, writing words, trying to elevate these children. That's why I deserve it all. Pray for all those who prayed against me. Every reason why my ancestors sent me, bitch, I deserve it all. His confidence grows throughout the course of the third verse. The first half sees him wish well for himself, his mom, his kids, his community, and the purity of his spirituality. However, it's in the last verse, the last half of this verse, where the slow burn of a song comes to a point of climax and true fruition as the beat begins to swell with Kendrick layering his vocals. Lines like, I burned this bitch down, don't you play with me or stay with me. I'm crashing out right now, no one's safe with me. I did it with integrity and still try to hate on me, just wait and see. More blood be spillin', it's just paint to me. Dangerously nothing changed with me, still got pain in me. Flip a coin, want the shameless me or the famous me. How annoying does it anger me to know the lames can speak on the origins of the game I breathe. That's insane to me, it's important, I deserve it all because it's mine. The overwhelming nature of this swell cuts immediately. The beat drops out. Everything that we had been building to is removed for a solo Kendrick to deliver the final line. Tell me why you think that you deserve the greatest of all time, motherfucker. Before moving forward, let's look at some of those lines in that final swell, just because there's some incredible lyricism here, but also some thematic hints. More blood be spilling, it's just paint to me. What an incredible line. Like, that is so badass. That's obviously a reference to the beef. That's obviously a reference to like the narrative established in Whacked Out Murals. Like, there is more blood to spill, and to Kendrick, spilled blood is just something that inspires him to create. It's a tool that he uses to create upon. And if blood has to be spilled, it will just fuel his art. It's such a captivating line. It speaks to this creative idea, but also to the conflicting nature that he's representing on this album. Furthermore, how annoying does it anger me to know that the lames can speak on the origins of the game I breathe. Speaks to the value of the culture, how some people outside of the culture, commentators, people within the rap game can decide what the culture is. They attempt to define it. They attempt to define rap. And for Kendrick, someone that grew up on the streets of Compton, someone that went to meet Pac as a child at a swap meet in LA, someone that has lived and breathed hip hop and struggled and challenged himself to innovate the genre with albums that that would take listeners years to unpack, that would change the possibilities for what you could and couldn't do in hip hop and rap. To be passed the torch from some of the greatest innovators of previous generations. How it angers him to hear people outside of the culture or people that don't have these experiences try to define the culture. And to me, this line really stands out because, again, it kind of alludes to the beef, but there is this element of the culture can't be defined. It's not simple like that. And we see that in the Squabble Up video, how nuanced and vast it is. We see that here as well, that how dare you try to define the culture? How dare you try to define hip hop and discredit me in doing so? It's a really interesting line, and this climax is one of my most favorite parts on the album. It's so the song is such a slow burn. Again, it's not there designed to be a hit. Like, this song is for the lyricists for those who want to listen to the poetry of it, for those that want to listen to every development. It's such a dense song that's worth listening to on repeat and repeat and repeat. But that final swell is where it all comes together, and it's absolutely incredible. It is in this last verse that Kendrick has not necessarily reconciled that he does deserve it all. Even as that refrain echoes at the end, we're still left wondering where he falls on this idea, but instead he has reconciled with the nature of his humanity. He seeks peace but is willing to spill more blood, something that he'll have to use as ink to his pen, and despite his wealth and accolades, he still hurts and is allowed to process these feelings. It is such a juxtaposition that makes humanity as complex as it is, that makes culture as complex as it is. What's most interesting is the concluding declaration. To seek the GOAT title is only for one's own vanity. This is a title that outside of the vacuum of rap and to the greater extent popular culture, popular music, is meaningless when held beside the desire for health and peace for your family and the betterment of your community, providing jobs and support for vulnerable people within your community. So while Kendrick declares himself the greatest of all time, he does so in an attempt to embark on change. Man at the Garden represents a whirlwind of personal growth and is likely the artistic result of years of therapy and independent questioning. But Kendrick sees the role of the goat as more than a title. This is a leadership opportunity to elevate the culture as a whole. I think that the Garden of Gethsemane is most likely the reference Kendrick is making. Eden would be too on the nose. To embark on such personal change is challenging. To question everything about your values and to be at conflict with your own self for your success is painful. To reach this point of transformative acceptance was likely an agonizing and all-consuming process. Symbolically, Man at the Garden very much rests on the significance of the Garden of Gethsemane as a place and process for reconciling struggle into change, or rather the ending of one cycle and a subsequent new beginning. Building off of the ideas of Squabble Up, Dodger Blue carries more weight to it than one may expect. The song is coupled with the use of imagery that has previously been used to differentiate and distinguish different groups. However, Kendrick seeks to bring them together, as we've seen with the Squabble Up music video, with the Pop Out concert. The pre-chorus, the repeating refrain, walk, 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 tip, toe, pivot, walk, is a series of steps for Crip walking, a dance created by the Crips with the original intention of differentiating and identifying themselves at parties. Furthermore, blue is the color for the Crips, and Kendrick is wearing blue and a Dodgers hat in the Squabble Up video. The distinction here is that blue is the color of the Crips, but Dodgers gear is typically associated with different Mexican gangs in LA, particularly the 18th Street Gang and the Sureños gangs. Furthermore, the song features Roddy Ricch, who has alleged ties to the Compton Crips, and the album Beyond Dodger Blue also features contributions from Lefty Gunplay, allegedly of the Baldwin Park Crips, and Peso, who supposedly has ties to Florencia 13. Much like the Pop-Out concert, there is an attempt to unify LA culture, to remove the barriers that divide various communities for the better of everyone. Kendrick has done so by mixing affiliations and symbolism. Symbols and ideas and visuals that are meant to differentiate, Kendrick is bringing together in order to remove these defining factors that separate, and in order to unify. And of course, in addition to these symbols, there is the musical fusion that we see with these various Latin elements used not only as like elements within beats or like a gimmick used to create like a sonic variance, but used as a central motif to the album. On this idea, Barrera commented on a post on socials, "Your ability to fuse diverse musical backgrounds is inspiring. I am in awe of how your emerging worlds have collided into something special. I can only hope this collaboration inspires others to embrace their cultural narratives." It echoes the idea that representation matters. Cultural narratives matter. And like when these ideas are brought to the forefront, they can have change that is impactful beyond just an album, beyond just hip hop. On the note of features, as we've been listing off people on the record, aside from SZA, everyone featured on the album, before it dropped, had fewer than 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. If we're talking about community, Kendrick isn't using features to ride on someone else's coattails and invite their audience in on his work. Instead, he's using his cultural weight, the momentum of his moment, to shine a light on up-and-coming artists. Artists that he respects, artists that he thinks are the next generation of LA hip-hop. Artists like Dodie Six, Lefty Gunplay, Kali the Sensei, 67X, Roddy Ricch, Ashike, Hitter J3, Young Threat, and Peso. Furthermore, many of these features are crafted to sound like they were recorded side by side with Kendrick in the booth. Whether this is true or not does not change the intention. Particularly Dodie Six on Hey Now, with the two splitting the first half of Dodie Six's verse, with Kendrick responding directly to his line in a supporting role. We see this again on GNX, the title track, where Kendrick only raps the hook in the chorus, with each verse a spotlight on someone else, allowing for them to lyrically dance around Kendrick's chorus. While all the features are great, Dodie 6 on Hey Now is infectious, and Hida J3 on GNX has got this gruff melodicism that bounces around the beat, and it's so reminiscent of Method Man and his unique timbre in his voice. Between Squabble Up and Dodger Blue, we see a lyrical need for unity. We see Kendrick is looking at LA culture through Black culture, through Hispanic culture, to look at unifying LA through the culture. We can see his attempts to do so are not just lyrical, but they're through the use of symbolism. They're through the use of visuals. But there's so much more on GNX that attaches meaning between the greater narrative and these other songs. Take the hook on Peekaboo, for example. The rapid fire, what they talking about, they ain't talking about nothing, highlights how there is largely a lack of substance in the genre, which we discussed on Reincarnated. Rap was once the voice of the oppressed, being based largely in reality, and as those realities changed and new narratives of self-gratifying fantasies took over, we see that more and more this has diluted the genre. This, of course, is not to look down on rap lyrics that are not telling substantial thought-provoking narratives. After all, creativity and artistry manifest themselves in infinite ways. But when we make the connection between this and Whacked Out Murals, we could see a link that looks at the influence artists like Diddy's and the Drakes have had on up-and-coming rappers. And we could look at how that is affecting hip-hop from a cultural standpoint. Peekaboo itself is almost comical. It's almost funny. The title is reminiscent of the Not Like Us line, sometimes you have to pop out. But Kendrick plays with different vocal inflections to parody rappers that talk about nothing. Despite the comical performance, there is a menacing undertone that supports the idea of the parody. Kendrick is very much separating himself from this crowd by making an example of them. It's that boogeyman persona. And there's something in the fact that this song is parodying something through comedy, yet sounds so tough that makes it infinitely more menacing. One of my favorite songs on the record continues to examine this divide among the scene. Hey Now moves with an unsettling lightness for how threatening Kendrick sounds on the song. Before breaking down some lyrics, I would be remiss not to mention that in addition to a really chilling beat, the bridge of this song is so bizarre. Musically, it feels like alternative rock, and lyrically, it discusses aliens, and it just feels like something Andre 3000 would say. It's a super cool moment that lasts all of 19 seconds, and it just stands out as such a unique moment on the record. That bridge is just one of those moments that sticks out to me. I love it so much. Back to the actual lyrics. Hey Now we see Kendrick emphasize his own piece by repeating the same opening line to a verse on 2 occasions. Hey now, say now, I'm all about my yen. Big face Buddha got my peace from within. It's a callback to the idea of a mindset that Kendrick introduced on Whacked Out Murals. And again, this idea that he's out to preserve his peace. If you put him on the offense, he will absolutely destroy you in the name of his own personal peace, the preservation of that mental calm. However, this song in particular references the Drake beef probably the most on the record, and it takes it to a really unique place. First, there's a offhand lyrical callback to Tupac's Hit 'Em Up, among the greatest diss tracks ever recorded, in a song that ignited the West Coast East Coast wars by directing it at Biggie and Diddy. Pac originally rapped Little Accident Murderers and I Ain't Never Heard of Ya. On Hey Now, Kendrick raps, it's the Ben Frank murderer, Mr. I Ain't Heard of Ya. It's a deliberate connection to Pac and the action he took in what was one of the biggest feuds in pop culture. Now, there was this little subsection of the Kendrick-Drake beef surrounding the legacy of Pac, with Drake buying Pac's ring in a bid to liken himself to Pac, right? Kind of buying that sort of association, that extension of the Tupac legacy. And of course, he used AI Tupac vocals on Tailor Made Freestyle. Kendrick stands as a defender of the West Coast and a much clearer extension of the Pac legacy. He couldn't simply let these things slide, and has since done many subtle, if you know you know type things that to pay homage to Pac, like this obscure line, for example, or dressing in similar colors as Pac did at the Pop Out show. Um, it's just Kendrick is linking this beef to the previous one, recognizing a greater lineage, an extension of battle rapping, and in some sort of meta way, also on this record that's so concerned with the culture, there is that element of he's reconciling his past actions, almost regretful, but still recognizing that this is an element of the culture. Another line goes, you know, the last one figured he was Magneto. You play God, you're going to get what you ask for. And again, looking around online, this is a line that seems a little ambiguous. No one really knows who this Magneto figure is, but given the context of the song, it could be a reference to Drake, you know, being in a position of power, thinking he can call the shots and deflect what's thrown his way. And right before this line, Kendrick raps, "You crash out, then you better break the backboard." Now, if you are like me and you are older than 30, to crash out can mean many things. But in this context, it means to react uncontrollably out of anger or to do something damn near murderous. If you're going to have the audacity to make a kill shot, it better be so spectacular of a slam dunk that the backboard shatters. So that epic tales of this moment will ring through coming generations. Perhaps accusing your opponent of pedophilia and existing as a byproduct of colonialism, if you will, would be shattering the backboard. The most interesting line in the song, and I would argue among the strongest lines on the album, however, goes, "The Black Noah, I just strangled me a goat." There are a few layers to this, all of them biblical. In this line, Kendrick is referring to himself as Noah, the man entrusted with building an ark to save one type of each animal species to ensure the flood that God is sending to cleanse the earth, to ensure the preservation of all life. The purpose of Noah is to secure the future of life in a new world. Building off whacked out murals and Watch the Party Die, Kendrick has delivered an arc in the form of GNX with the goal of pushing the culture to a brighter world. The strangling of a goat is a bit more figurative, as Noah did not actually sacrifice a goat in the Bible. However, sacrificial slaughter was prevalent in the Bible and the ancient world, particularly that of livestock. To sacrifice a lamb or a goat was to provide substance to your prayers for a better future. In this case, the goat referred to in this line is Drake. But first, listen to what Kendrick says. "I just strangled me a goat. A goat. A goat. Not the goat. A goat." Many consider and considered Drake to be the GOAT for his impressive sales numbers and accolades linked to his massive audience and streaming numbers. He's a record-breaking artist, and nobody can take that away from him. However, as the beef was very much a clash of values, Drake embodied this idea that numbers equaled greatness. Kendrick doesn't see it that way, and many people also don't see it that way. But given public perception, Kendrick is happy to say he killed a goat. Because if you kill who people claim to be the best, does that not make you the greatest of all time? Now, this couplet between the idea of sacrificial elements and the Black Noah, we can compound this image to Kendrick seeking a better world, and he is literally willing to sacrifice a champion of the opposition to ensure safe passage for the culture. This idea of sacrificing a goat for the preservation of the culture as he ushers in this new world, this new era. It's a really interesting idea, I believe, and again, plays with that sort of biblical, ancient world, Old Testament vibe. Alternatively, or in conjunction with this, his use of GOAT is not to recognize the public perception of Drake, but is rather belittling him as a scapegoat, pinning the problems of your hip hop on him as a figurehead that embodied everything wrong with the culture. This is a really interesting line of thought, I think, when you look at Watch the Party Die and when you look at Whacked Out Murals, these songs that don't name anyone by name but are clearly taking aim at particular figureheads as metaphors for the culture gone astray, or figureheads that are seeking to push the culture in a different direction. Particularly Drake and Diddy, the idea of sacrificing this goat, a scapegoat, using Drake as a foil for what is wrong in hip hop, and taking him down to symbolize the end of an old industry, pinning that idea of your hip hop onto his identity and sacrificing it so that way the culture can move forward, is a really, really interesting thought. Either way, a goat has been sacrificed and the rain is coming down. As demonstrated, GNX is a highly ambitious album that is worth so much acclaim and is truly rewarding to dig into and unearth this additional narrative, this message that is buried underneath, intentionally buried underneath the album itself. A few things have come up since my initial recording of this episode that I think are worth throwing in there. Billboard. Now that we are into 2025, Billboard has named Kendrick Lamar Pop Star of the Year. Rather a title that seems to commend the control that Kendrick has displayed over pop culture in this year, but a confusing one at that, as they also named Drake Rapper of the Year, which everyone was kind of perplexed at the flip of giving Kendrick Pop Star and Drake Rapper. That aside, I think the Pop Star of the Year award doesn't speak to Kendrick being a pop star, but speaks to the idea of just the command that he held and the way that he shaped public perception around hip hop and what he was doing was super impressive, super incredible. Also, with 3 number 1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, Kendrick is the artist of all genres with the most number 1s in the year of 2024. Right? Again, bringing it back to the beef with Drake talking all about numbers. These are numbers. This is tangible, right? And I say it once, I say it again. Streaming numbers, sales, awards, nominations, these are not metrics that we measure art and the value that they have, but they are metrics that we can look at and determine relevance, or just how things fit in the public sphere. Lastly, Eminem has since chimed in, claiming that Kendrick will and deserves to sweep the Grammys. Which, given the timing of everything, if Kendrick does in fact sweep the Grammys, he will perform at the Super Bowl a week later. This would be a monumental sort of moment, like a huge sweep. Again, awards don't mean anything, but further demonstrating that command over the public sphere, the pop culture, and then performing at one of the largest stages in the world. That is crazy. And again, if there is a GNX 2, if there is a separate album incoming, I've seen lots of theories on this. If something extra is in fact coming, maybe that's the time to do it. Who knows? We'll see. In the end, GNX is a love letter to hip-hop, a statement of love and respect to LA life, to Black identity, and to the culture. Adorned in a distinctly West Coast chassis, Kendrick plays with a slight hint of nostalgia as a musical callback, a way to ask you to remember the classic works of the likes of Dre, Snoop, Cube, Pac, and more, and trace a far longer lineage to what he is currently doing to a far grander tradition. Rather than try to reinvent the genre for a third time, or a fourth time depending on who you ask, GNX wants you to vibe with it and celebrate a rich and beautiful heritage. Speaking to the line from Whacked Out Murals, this is not for lyricists, I swear it's not the sentiments, fuck a double entendre, I want y'all to feel this shit. Musically, that stands true. Lyrically, however, there is in fact a greater message despite this line. The meaning behind the album, as we've discussed, is buried deep within the center of the record. It's there for those who seek it, but you're going to have to dig deep. For such a subdued message, it's easy to see the themes that run throughout the album, but the album as a whole feels free and unburdened by an overt narrative. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. What seems like just a body of work is in fact an incredibly nuanced, deep, refined, and sophisticated album that challenges the listener to give pause and think. Through this, Kendrick preaches peace while waging his own war against an industry that, embodied by both the likes of Drake and Diddy, thrives off control and profiteering while enabling its own cycle of oppression and predatory manipulation. Kendrick demonstrates himself as the perfect foil, embedding the spirit of hip-hop and the soul of the culture. With GNX, we receive a level of clarity that brings Kendrick Lamar's 2024 into full circle. What started as arguably the most thrilling rap beef the genre has ever seen. And if you don't agree with that, I would say top 3, maybe top 5, but certainly a top 3 rap beef. Had evolved since, and the signs were there with the pop-out concert, with the Not Like Us music video with Harper's Bazaar. GNX has made it so clear that this was always bigger than a rap beef, that this was about hip-hop, this was about the culture, this was about cultural identity through artistry. And through GNX, Kendrick has kind of culminated to this point where he has expressed his message clearly, but we could see throughout the year there was tangible actions to uplift and elevate LA culture with the pop out. And the Not Like Us video, bringing the community together. There was intention of bringing hip hop into new spaces through Harper's Bazaar. There was this goal to create something bigger than an album and bigger than just an idea, but to actually put it into action. And all of these things that happened throughout the year, the pop out, Not Like Us, the music video, at least, it was very easy to think this is a victory lap. This is Kendrick continuing to push the beef further, but now we could see all of these things that he was doing with them, right? The donating proceeds from the pop out, the billboard that followed the pop out, the things like that. There was so much more going on, right? And Kendrick was very quick to move, to build upon his increased visibility, to move forward with an artistic movement that sought to unify LA culture and elevate the culture. GNX is a reflection of the real world. But in the time that he was creating this album, Kendrick was also using the message on GNX to hopefully inspire and create actual change in that world, right? Life influencing art, art influencing life. After undergoing his own personal metamorphosis, he seeks to elevate the culture and better his community by removing a hedonistic arm of colonialism that has infiltrated rap and put it and its people in a chokehold. By highlighting such a divide between himself and this side of the industry, Kendrick looks at the current state of hip-hop and longs for more as he seeks to abandon the current industry in hopes of finding better. There is more for everyone if the storm is to be weathered. Truly, no one is making records like this. Even when appearing to be simpler and less dense, GNX is sprawling with complexities, double entendres, and cultural and biblical references. It's brilliant, highly ambitious, and exceptionally developed in how it appeals to both those looking to bump a classic-sounding track and those looking to understand a greater level of perspective. And perhaps that's what art is all about. There's supposed to be more if you're looking for it. Everything is something. Thank you for joining me today on episode 37 of Beats by Jer. In 2 weeks, on January 20th, I am thrilled to announce that I will be joined by none other than Alice in Chains guitarist, Jerry Cantrell. Join me in conversation with Cantrell as we discuss his newest album, I Want Blood, and his upcoming tour. I'm Jared Harris, and this is Beats by Jer.